Chapter 600. With the Covenant Order, the Martial Pavilion couldn't attack and could only wait for orders from the Eternal City. However, the entire Martial Pavilion didn't know what the Eternal City was. However, the Covenant Order was no small matter, so they could only wait. At this moment, Jiang Chen glanced at Ji Chongyang and said softly, "Grudges won't disappear with the passage of time. I remember what the Martial Pavilion did to me in the past." "What do you want?" Ji Chongyang's tone gradually turned cold. Although the Chuanzuan sect was strong now, the Martial Pavilion wasn't weak either. If it weren't for the Covenant Order, the Martial Pavilion wouldn't have held up together. Now, listening to Jiang Chen's words, it seemed like they were going to start a war. "Nothing, I just came here today to express my attitude," Jiang Chen said softly. With that, Jiang Chen turned and left. Ji Chongyang looked at Jiang Chen's back as he left. His face was ashen, and there was a burning anger in his heart. He was once an ant, but now he had become a giant. Back then, if he had been ruthless and attacked regardless of everything, how could the current Jiang Chen be? However, the past couldn't be undone, and there was no use regretting it. "You went to the Martial Pavilion?" Half a day later, Jiang Chen returned to the Zhongzhou dynasty, and Li Fengze came to find him. He knew what Jiang Chen had done, but he couldn't help but ask. "I went for a walk." Jiang Chen nodded and frowned. The Martial Pavilion can't be underestimated. "The Martial Pavilion has always been strong," Li Fengze said. With that, Li Fengze looked up to the sky and sighed. He placed an ancient token in Jiang Chen's hand. This token was engraved with obscure patterns. Upon closer inspection, it looked like an ancient army character. During this period, an aura of vicissitudes of life was emitted from the token. Obviously, this token had been around for a long time. For me, Jiang Chen was stunned. Why would someone give him a token out of the blue? "It's not for you. Someone sent it to my Central Continent dynasty." Li Fengze's eyes were full of helplessness. He pointed at the token in Jiang Chen's hand and said, "Do you know what this is?" "Never seen him before." Jiang Chen shook his head. "The Covenant Order," Li Fengze said. "Once the Covenant Order is issued, all living beings in this world will have no choice but to obey." After saying that, Li Fengze took out a blood-stained silk book. There were 3 ancient words written on it. "Eternal Fortress." This was sent along with the Writ of Alliance. "It seems like my Central Continent dynasty will also have to leave this place." Li Fengze sighed. When Jiang Chen heard this, he was shocked. He had just heard about the Writ of Alliance from Ji Chongyang. Who would have thought that as soon as he returned, the Central Continent Imperial Court would also receive the Order of Alliance? Did this mean that the Central State Dynasty was also going to the Eternal City? "Can I not go?" Jiang Chen asked. "I cannot go." Li Fengze shook his head. Then, he threw an ancient book to Jiang Chen and said, "Take a closer look at what the Covenant Order represents." "What can it represent?" Jiang Chen curled his lips. Wasn't it just a token? Was there a need to make such a big deal out of it? However, when Jiang Chen saw the Covenant Order recorded in the ancient book, his expression changed drastically. According to the ancient book, in an ancient era, there was once a peerless powerhouse who used the flesh and bones of deities to build an ancient city. This city cut off the path of future generations and sealed the sky of the foreign land. That ancient city had always existed since it was built. It had never collapsed. Every few eras or years, the Eternal City would send out the Covenant Order to all the major sects, clans, and forces to guard the Eternal City. According to the ancient book, if the Eternal City fell, the godless continent would also be gone. And this Writ of Alliance was created when the Eternal Fortress was built. At that time, all the living beings of the godless continent worked together to create the Covenant Order and made a blood oath to the heavens. Anyone who saw the Covenant Order must go to the Eternal City. Otherwise, there would be a great disaster and destruction. "This time, I'm afraid I won't be able to come back." Li Fengze sighed. Ever since he received the Covenant Order, he searched through many ancient books. In the end, he saw something about the Eternal City in a yellow book. It was a fortress, a perimeter wall, and an eye of the formation. Once they reached the Eternal City, they would have to face the living beings of the foreign land in the future. After reaching there, They would have to fight again and again until they died in battle and shed their last drop of blood. Since the establishment of the Eternal City, no less than 100 sects, clans, and forces of the godless continent and the flowing heaven domain entered the Eternal City. And none of these sects, clans, and forces could return. They were either still fighting in the Eternal City or had died in battle. If the Eternal City collapses, the godless continent will be gone. Li Fengzi said in a deep voice, that is a barrier between the foreign land and the godless continent. If the Eternal City collapses, the foreign land will invade the godless continent. If it wasn't for the world, who would be willing to defend it to the death? When Jiang Qin heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. What kind of war was that? Since the establishment of the Eternal City, the war was still going on? Or could it be that the war had already begun before the Eternal City was established? According to the Alliance Order, the Central State Dynasty can't take action. Li Fengzi said and patted Jiang Qin's shoulder helplessly. I can't help you with the matter of the 18 clans. It's okay. There's still the barbarian tribe, Jiang Qin said, but he had no confidence in his heart. Previously, even with the addition of the Central State Dynasty and the barbarian tribe, Jiang Qin didn't have the confidence to defeat the 18 clans. Now, without the Central State Dynasty, Jiang Qin's power became weaker and weaker. It could even be said that the power in Jiang Qin's hands was no longer enough to contend against the 18 clans. Don't count on the barbarian tribe. Li Fengzi had a strange expression and said, the barbarian tribe also received the Alliance Order. What? Jiang Qin exclaimed. This meant that after all this time, the Chuanzun sect still hadn't changed? The barbarian tribe and the Central State Dynasty had left, but the Chuanzun sect was still the same Chuanzun sect. How could they contend against the 18 clans? That's not right. During this period of time, several clans, sects, and dynasties have received the Alliance Order. Jiang Qin frowned. Has such a thing happened before? The Alliance Order has been issued frequently? There's only one possibility. The Eternal City can't hold on any longer. Li Fengzi said in a low voice. Only when the Eternal City is facing a calamity will the Alliance Order be issued frequently. In the beginning, it was the Qin Kong clan, then the Martial Pavilion, the Mo clan, and so on. Now, within a day, the Central State Dynasty and the Barbarian Tribe have received the Alliance Order one after another. Li Fengzi explained, the Eternal City, I'm afraid it's going to collapse. The top sects have all left, so what about the 18 clans? No one can contend with them. And when they gain control of the godless continent and open the door of darkness, the alien creatures will still be able to invade the godless continent. Jiang Qin said in a deep voice, are we now facing internal and external troubles? Chapter 601. The Eternal City was in a state of emergency. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent out the Alliance Order so frequently. However, the godless continent was also in imminent danger. Once the 18 families ruled the godless continent and opened the door of darkness, those foreign creatures could enter the godless continent without going through the Eternal City. At that time, the godless continent would be protected. The Eternal City is very important. Since we have received the Alliance Order, we must go. Li Fengzi said. As for the godless continent, at this point, Li Fengzi patted Jiang Qin's shoulder and looked at him. I believe in you. Believe in me? Jiang Qin was stunned. Are you kidding me? I'm only at Heaven's Blight, and there are 2 demigods in the 18 families. In the current situation, the 18 families had the ability to unify the godless continent without the 2 demigods. However, the 18 families had suffered heavy losses and hadn't continued to expand their forces. They were probably waiting for the 2 demigods to appear. Once the 2 demigods appeared, it was only a matter of time before the godless continent fell. You are the divine king, Li Fengzi said. Now, not only do we have to believe in you, but you also have to believe in yourself. Otherwise, who will save the world? Jiang Qin heard this and couldn't help but curl his lips. He muttered, who wants to save the world? If possible, I just want to be with the people around me and spend the rest of my life peacefully. But you have no choice, Li Fengzi said. Then, Li Fengzi looked at the sky as if he was thinking about something. After a dozen breaths, he slowly asked, "The divine king of heaven origin is your previous incarnation, right?" "Yes." Jiangchen nodded. This was no longer a secret. "Then you should know that when you were the divine king of heaven origin, you died in battle for the flowing sky world." Li Fengzi said, "At that time, you also saved the world. But that was my third incarnation." Jiang Chun said snappily, "Each incarnation is different. I didn't think so much in this incarnation." "The divine king of heaven origin is also one of your previous incarnations, right?" Li Fengzi asked again. Jiang Chun was stunned. He didn't know where Li Fengzi learned about this matter. However, since the other party had asked, it meant that he knew about this matter. Jiang Chun also nodded and said, "So what?" At the mention of the profound sky supreme being, Jiang Chun thought of Mu Yud. He didn't know where that bastard Taoist was right now. His profound sky divine king's body was still in the hands of that bastard Taoist. In the profound sky divine king's life, according to the records, you also fought for the sake of the world and died in battle. Li Fengzi sighed. "I have to say, you were a hero in all your lives." "I really don't know." Jiang Chun smiled bitterly. "I have lost the memories of my previous lives." "It doesn't matter if you remember or not. You just need to understand one thing. Since you did this in your previous lives, you will do the same in this life." Li Fengzi said with certainty. This made Jiang Chun feel puzzled. Why did he have to do the same in this life when he had saved lives in his previous lives? Why? What world? What common people? When Jiang Chun was at his most difficult time, he didn't see many people in the world come to help him, nor did the common people show him a trace of pity. Now he was asked to save the common people in the world? Not for others, for yourself, for the people around you. Li Fengzi said, "If the 18 families rule the godless continent, will the people around you still have a place to stay?" "But I don't have that ability now," Jiang Chun said in a deep voice. If his strength allowed, Jiang Chun would naturally do it. But now, he was just a cultivator at Heaven's Blight. In the past, this level of cultivation was indeed enough to be looked at. But in this environment, what was a Heaven's Blight? Sometimes, it would be difficult to even protect himself. "I don't want to say anymore. I just want you to know that you don't have much time left," Li Fengzi said. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Maybe you should go to the third mountain." "The third mountain? That's a forbidden area." Jiang Chen's expression changed slightly. Since ancient times, no one had been able to come out of the third mountain alive. Even Lin Lang Wentian was not sure if he was dead or alive. No one knew if Lin Lang Wentian could walk out of the third mountain alive. And most importantly, what was the point of going to the third mountain? "There is a way to become a god on land in the third mountain," Li Fengzi said. "If you don't die in there, you can become a god on land." At that time, so what if the 18 families are strong? So what if there are demigods? With a raise of your hand, all obstacles, all demonic barriers, will turn into ashes. However, entering the third mountain was gambling with one's life. For Jiang Chun, as long as he was given time, he would definitely be able to rise. But now, the only thing Jiang Chun lacked was time. The barren state has already fallen. If the 18 families make a move again, their next target will be the middle state. Li Fengzi said, "When the middle state has also fallen, what sect on the godless continent will be able to stop the 18 families?" You also know that the middle state dynasty can't make a move now. If the 18 families attack, the middle state dynasty will be giving up. When Jiang Chun heard this, he immediately fell silent. Yes, he didn't have much time left. When will the middle state dynasty go to the eternal fortress? Jiang Chun asked. There was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. In the next few days, at most a month, Li Fengzi said, "I'll go to the third mountain." Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed. "But you have to promise me one thing. Before the middle state dynasty goes to the eternal fortress, even if you have to make an exception, you have to protect the entire sect." "Okay," Li Fengzi nodded. "I'll make an exception, but you have to think carefully." "I don't need to think about it. I have no choice." Jiang Chen smiled bitterly and sighed. "If I can come out of the third mountain alive, The 18 families and the demigods will all be pressed to the ground. If I can't come out, this life will come to an end. Although there are regrets and unwillingness in my heart, at least I've tried my best. Sai, who isn't? Li Fengzi smiled bitterly. I haven't had enough of being the imperial ruler, and I have to go to the eternal fortress. My position as the imperial ruler is really torturous and unbearable. That's it then. At this moment, Jiang Chun didn't want to continue talking. After giving some instructions, he got up and left the Middle State dynasty. Half a day later, in an extremely remote corner of the godless continent, Jiang Chun tore through the void and appeared. His aura was like a rainbow, and his eyes were fixed on a tall mountain in front of him. To be precise, it was a mountain range. There were a total of 9 mountains. 8 of them were outside, and 1 was in the middle, like stars surrounding the moon. The tall mountain in the middle was the legendary Forbidden Area, the 3rd mountain. Chapter 602. Since ancient times, very few people have set foot in this place. There were no birds, beasts, or insects. There was only a patch of ancient trees. The chi of heaven and earth was extremely dense here. It turned into a fog that enveloped the entire mountain range. Especially on the 3rd mountain, the chi of heaven and earth had turned into water. It was like a drizzle that watered the 3rd mountain all year round. At this moment, Jiang Chun was standing outside the mountains. He turned around and looked in the direction of the barren state. A trace of worry flashed across his eyes. He didn't know if the Chuanzuan sect could withstand it. He also didn't know if the Zhongzhou dynasty could protect the Chuanzuan sect. If I can make it out alive, I will have the final say in this world. The worry in Jiang Chun's eyes gradually disappeared. It was replaced by determination. However, if he died on the 3rd mountain, he wouldn't even be able to see the person he liked the most, the person closest to him. Time to go. After a dozen breaths, Jiang Chun calmed down. He stepped out and used the shrinking technique. In the blink of an eye, he stepped into the mountain range. Buzz! At this moment, there was a buzzing sound. A special order and law appeared on the 3rd mountain. Jiang Chun felt as if a mountain had collapsed. An invisible gravitational force was exerted on him. Puff! Even though Jiang Chun's physical body was extremely strong, under this force of gravity, Jiang Chun couldn't help but tremble. A mouthful of blood and internal organs were spat out from his mouth. What the hell is this place? Jiang Chun was shocked. No wonder the 3rd mountain was a forbidden area. The order and laws here alone weren't something that ordinary people could withstand. Jiang Chun stayed where he was and tried to adapt to the order and laws here. It wasn't until 3 days later that Jiang Chun finally got used to it. Slowly letting out a sigh of relief, Jiang Chun wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he raised his head and looked straight at the 3rd mountain. However, before he could take a few steps, he saw a figure in front of him. That person's back was facing Jiang Chun. He was like a statue. In his hand was a black sickle that was dripping with blood. It was as if the blood on the sickle would never stop dripping. Who is it? Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes. The blood in his body surged as he formed 6 little fingers on his left hand and the 6 paths reincarnation fist sign on his right hand. The 3rd mountain is a forbidden area. Trespassers will die. At this moment, the statue-like person turned around. He had no face, no facial features. On that bald face, there was only the word army. How do I enter the 3rd mountain? Jiang Chun asked. Senior, who are you? I am a soldier from the 3rd mountain. I am here to guard this place. The person said, if you can take 3 of my moves, you can continue. If you can't, this will be your burial ground. Oh, only 3 moves? Jiang Chun whispered. Wasn't this too simple? However, a moment later, the man's body trembled, and his energy exploded out. Jiang Chun's face turned green. Demigod? Jiang Chun cried out in surprise. Withstanding 3 moves from a demigod? Wasn't this a joke? Not to mention 3 moves. He couldn't even take half a move. First move. Before Jiang Chun could speak, the scythe in the man's hand swept out. A sharp black crescent moon bombarded Jiang Chun's body. In an instant, Jiang Chun coughed up blood and was cut in half at the waist. His upper body and lower body were separated, and his internal organs were shattered. Even his soul was severely injured, flickering like a candle flame. "Not bad. I'll give you 10 breaths of time," the man said, and did not continue to attack. Jiang Chun did not ask any more questions. He hurriedly burned his essence blood and the inextinguishable fire. In the shortest amount of time, he reconstructed his physical body. At the same time, the myriad change celestial lamp lit up, and a wisp of power like a spring breeze nurtured his injured soul. After 10 breaths, Jiang Chun recovered. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the scythe in the man's hand slashed out again. This time, the cold light tore through the void. Like a black dragon, it fell from the top of Jiang Chun's head and swallowed Jiang Chun in one gulp. Slash! Jiang Chun roared and struck out with a myriad change celestial slash, directly shattering the cold light. However, Jiang Chun's physical body was already shattered, and his soul flickered unstably. He was on the verge of death. "I'll give you 10 more breaths of time," the man whispered, and a blood-red light appeared on the scythe in his hand, blending with the darkness. It was as if hell appeared on the scythe. Jiang Chun was silent and still did not say a word. He burned all the essence blood in his body, and the fire of the undying bird burned like a raging flame. His physical body was reconstructed, and his soul was nurtured. After 10 breaths of time, Jiang Chun burned all of his essence blood. The blood in his body was exhausted, but his injuries were healed. However, he had turned into a hunchbacked old man. He was past his prime and looked like a man who was about to die. "If I can withstand this last attack, will I be able to enter the third mountain?" Jiang Chun asked with a solemn look in his eyes. His pupils were murky. His blood had dried up, and even his lifespan had decreased. However, at this point, Jiang Chun didn't have a choice anymore. If he wanted to leave, the man before him would not let him. Last attack. The man did not answer Jiang Chun. After 10 breaths of time, he said those words and slashed out with the scythe in his hand. Boom! At that moment, Jiang Chun concealed his spirit and qi. The door of the Great Way opened in his body, and the qi of the Great Way exploded. This was the door of the Great Way that opened in his body after cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual. However, there was only a small crack in this door. Now, Jiang Chun was going all out. He wanted to use this man's attack to completely open the door of the Great Way. Boom! In the next moment, the black and red lights slashed at him. In an instant, Jiang Chun's physical body was destroyed. However, his soul was protected by the ever-changing heavenly lamp. Although he was severely injured, he was not destroyed. At the same time, the door of the Great Way blocked Jiang Chun's path like a boulder. The cold light slammed into the door of the Great Way. The sound of a bell being rung exploded and reverberated in all directions. Poof! Poof! At that moment, Jiang Chun's soul spat out 3 mouthfuls of spiritual energy. His entire soul dimmed and was almost destroyed. However, at the same time, the door of the Great Way vibrated. Under the cold light, the door was half opened. Buzz! Instantly, the qi of the Great Way exploded from the door. An obscure force spread in all directions and supported Jiang Chun's body. With the support of the Great Way and the care of the heavens, the enlightenment he gained was the same as when he ascended. In a short span of 3 breaths, Jiang Chun's physical body recovered. His soul shone like the sun, and there was a circular spot of light floating above Jiang Chun's soul. This was the seed formed by the power of the Great Way, the Tao seed. It's done! Jiang Chun was excited. He had risked his life to counterattack. He did not expect to succeed. The incomplete heavenly manual used the incomplete body as a guide to refine the corner of the Great Way. And that corner was the Tao seed. Once the Tao seed was formed, it was as if one's body was merged with the Great Way. In the future, there would be no bottlenecks in cultivation. When cultivating, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Tao seed? The incomplete heavenly manual? The man was shocked. There was finally a slight fluctuation in his originally calm tone. "Senior, do you know this cultivation technique?" Jiang Chen asked. "A broken path. I did not expect that there would still be people who continue to walk on it." The man shook his head. "Give up on this cultivation technique. So, what if you have formed the Tao seed? The Great Way is ethereal. Although the Tao seed in your body is merged with the Great Way, it is not necessarily a good thing. The Great Way is not something that everyone can merge with, let alone be controlled." Chapter 603. What cultivators cultivated was the illusory Great Tao. However, the Great Way was illusory, and all cultivators could only figure it out. How could they truly control the Great Way? It was possible to merge with the Great Way, but what would happen after merging? If one did not form the Great Way and could not control the Great Way, what was the use of merging with the Great Way? At most, one would have one more Taoist seed than an ordinary person. However, in Jiang Chen's heart, with the Taoist seed, he would not have any bottlenecks in his future cultivation. He would be nourished by the Great Way at all times, and his body would slowly improve. In the long run, he would be invincible. "Senior, how did you know about the incomplete heavenly manuals?" Jiang Chen asked. "Not only did I know about it, but in the darkest and most prosperous era, almost everyone cultivated the incomplete heavenly manual," the faceless man said. "However, this path was cut off. You can cultivate the incomplete heavenly manual to perfection, but the path after perfection is actually a dead end," the faceless man sighed. The faceless man seemed to have not spoken for a long time. After he finished speaking, he explained to Jiang Chen why he could not cultivate the incomplete heavenly manual. It turned out that since ancient times, the saying, "heaven is round and earth is round," had always existed. This was a word that people used to describe the Great Way. Because of this word, people in the later generations created the incomplete heavenly manual. Using one's body to guide the Great Way into one's body to repair one's incomplete body. This was the beginning of cultivation. It could be said that the incomplete heavenly manual was the first cultivation technique in the world. All the cultivation techniques in the later generations, no matter how high they were, originated from the incomplete heavenly manual. However, at the end of the incomplete heavenly manual, the sky was still the same, but the body was complete. The body was complete and no longer incomplete. It was like an iron wall. External factors, energy, and even the Great Way could not enter the body. As such, when the incomplete heavenly manual was cultivated to perfection, the cultivation had reached the end. However, in the later generations, there were people who took that step. That person was unknown, but it was known that he created the deficient earth manual. The heaven is round and earth was finally comprehended into two cultivation techniques: the incomplete heavenly manual and the deficient earth manual. However, only the creator of the deficient earth manual knew how to cultivate it. It did not spread out in the world. Because of this, without the deficient earth manual, the incomplete heavenly manual was gradually abandoned. Until now, no one had practiced the incomplete heavenly manual. Perhaps in this world, only Jiang Chen was still practicing the incomplete heavenly manual. Unless you can find the missing earth formula, otherwise, the heavens and the earth will not match. Your path will eventually come to an end, the faceless man said. But the earth-deficient technique has never been circulated, and no one has passed it down. Where am I going to find the earth-deficient technique? Jiang Chen smiled bitterly. He originally thought that after cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual, he had found a path to invincibility. Who would have thought that the end of this road was actually a dead end? Jiang Chen's mood at the moment was very complicated and uncomfortable. After cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual, Jiang Chen's combat strength was now very strong. He was almost invincible in the same realm. However, this was only temporary. By the time he cultivated the incomplete heavenly art to perfection, he would have reached the end of his cultivation path. At that time, could it be that he would have to watch those who came after him continuously surpass him while he himself would stay at the same place? While you have not cultivated the incomplete heavenly manual to perfection now, You can destroy the incomplete heavenly manual yourself and choose a new cultivation method, the faceless man said. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will be too late. When Jiang Qin heard that, he could not help but fall silent. Want him to change cultivation methods now? Was there enough time? Putting aside the fact that he had to choose a cultivation method that suited him, just based on the current time, Jiang Qin was not allowed to do so. Senior, is there really no other way? Jiang Qin asked. There is, the faceless man said. Create the earth-deficient technique yourself. When these words came out, Jiang Qin's face darkened. Creating a cultivation method was actually quite simple for Jiang Qin. However, to create a cultivation method that could continue the path of the incomplete heavenly manual, similar to the legendary earth-deficient technique, wasn't this too difficult? Is this the only way? Jiang Qin asked. This is the only way, the faceless man nodded and said. Then if the incomplete heavenly manual is cultivated to perfection, what level will my cultivation reach? Jiang Qin asked. Divine King, the faceless man said. When Jiang Qin heard that, he could not help but be stunned on the spot. What? Was it not enough to cultivate to the Divine King level? Could it be that in this world, there was really a realm that surpassed the Divine King level? However, Jiang Qin had never heard of it before. There is no hurry. I am only at Heaven's Blight now. I can cultivate slowly. In the process of cultivation, I can also slowly create the so-called earth-deficient technique, Jiang Qin said. Naturally, he would not give up on cultivating the incomplete heavenly manual so easily. When the faceless man heard that, he shook his head. He did not have a face, so his expression could not be seen. However, when he shook his head, Jiang Qin understood that perhaps the path he had chosen was really a dead end. There is no path in this world. The real path is created by walking it. Jiang Qin looked serious. Maybe I won't be able to walk down that path, but I believe that as long as the time is right and the opportunity is right, I won't have to walk down that path. It will appear in front of me. Since ancient times, there have been many geniuses who were as confident as you. However, what happened in the end? The faceless man said softly, Forget it, forget it. I do not wish to interfere with the path you have chosen. After saying that, the faceless man pointed behind him and said, Since you have withstood 3 of my moves, you can continue to move forward. Can I go straight to the 3rd mountain? Jiang Qin asked. No. The faceless man shook his head and said, The 3rd mountain is not so easy to enter. One step at a time. If you can pass all the tests, you can ascend the 3rd mountain. What is there on the 3rd mountain? Jiang Qin asked curiously. There are things that the world cannot understand, the faceless man said. Then he waved his hand and said, Go. Jiang Qin nodded. He cupped his hands at the faceless man to salute him. After expressing his gratitude, he started to walk away. However, when he was less than 100 meters away, Jiang Qin's body began to tremble. It was as if his soul was about to leave his body. It was as if some kind of force was trying to take away his soul. What the hell? What is this place? Jiang Qin was shocked. He quickly retreated until he was next to the faceless man. Then, the force disappeared. You can't pass, right? The faceless man seemed to have predicted this outcome. He said with a mocking tone, You are lucky that you did not die. Now, you can continue to move forward or leave alive. Then, the faceless man pointed in front of him. He waved his hand, and the soil in front of him exploded. Corpses and skeletons appeared. Since ancient times, most of the people who entered the 3rd mountain died by my hands. The faceless man said, Now that you have withstood 3 of my moves, you can choose to leave the 3rd mountain alive. Chapter 604. Senior, is there something strange ahead? Why do I feel like my soul is being sucked away? Jiang Qin asked. When he heard that, the faceless man understood that Jiang Qin would not retreat. There's a soul assimilation formation ahead. Those with weak willpower and soul power will not be able to pass through it. The faceless man said, Although you're strong, there's no way you can pass through the soul assimilation formation with your soul power. Soul assimilation formation? Jiang Qin muttered softly, and a smile appeared on his lips. What is this lad smiling about? The faceless man thought to himself as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Naturally, Jiang Chun had heard of the soul assimilation formation and knew how to dispel it. However, the soul assimilation formation that Jiang Chun knew of could only be considered as a minor one compared to the formation ahead. After all, this was the territory of the third mountain, and the formations here were not something that could be compared to the current world's formations. However, be it the soul assimilation formation or the minor one, they were all similar. That also meant that Jiang Chun could dispel the soul assimilation formation here as long as he spent a little more time. Here, then here, and here. I want some here too. Here? No. Here. Following that, Jiang Chun paced around the soul assimilation formation continuously. Wherever he passed, he would stop and frown while muttering to himself. At the same time, his hands were forming hand seals continuously, and rare treasures fell to form formation stones. At the side, the faceless man clenched his fists tightly, and his entire body trembled. He was not afraid. He was infuriated. If he had a face, one would be able to see how terrible his expression was. "Lad, this is the third mountain. What are you trying to do?" The faceless man hollered. "I took 3 of your moves. You can't attack me anymore, right?" Jiang Chun probed, feeling a little guilty. Jiang Chun knew very well that the faceless man did not use his full strength in the previous 3 moves. However, Jiang Chun was deeply afraid of angering the faceless man. At that time, the demigod would be able to deal with Jiang Chun in half a move. "According to the rules, I can't attack you anymore," the faceless man said. It was precisely because of this that the faceless man was angry. If he had known that Jiang Chun would be a disaster, he would have made an exception with those 3 moves and used all his strength to kill Jiang Chun. Draw the yin and yang firewood. Activate the 8 wastelands furnace. Ignite the power of the 4 symbols, and break the 9 palaces. A dozen breaths later, Jiang Chun formed a seal with his hands and muttered to himself. Then, a screen of light rose. Vaguely, the silhouettes of the 4 mythical beasts could be seen. There was also a furnace that was burning with yin and yang qi. Wang! After a few more breaths of time, a rumbling sound came from the front, and then the ground started to tremble. "It's broken!" Jiang Chun was excited. He pointed ahead and asked, "Can I go in now?" When the faceless man heard this, he was so angry that he didn't want to speak. "Enter. How could I stop you?" "Senior, I'm leaving," Jiang Chun said with a smile. He continued to walk forward. However, after he had advanced 1,000 meters and was only 100 meters away from the third mountain, his entire body turned cold. He had a premonition of great danger. Without any hesitation, Jiang Chun used shrinking earth into an inch in succession, and the energy in his body burned. He moved horizontally and retreated continuously. Finally, he returned to the faceless man's side. "Senior, that place is very strange," Jiang Chun said weakly. "I feel a great sense of crisis. That place can be considered the foot of the third mountain. There are many layers of restrictions there," said the faceless man. "The restrictions there are not something you can break. Only by finding the life gate can you enter the third mountain. Otherwise, you'll have to wait to be trapped in the restriction and be locked in there forever." As soon as these words came out, Jiang Chun's expression immediately became strange. "Big brother, I'm afraid you don't know the name of Chuanzuan's sex leader, right? Venerate, venerate, venerate all professions. Formations, restrictions, barriers, as long as it existed in this world, there was nothing Jiang Chun did not know." "Thank you for your guidance, senior," Jiang Chun said with a smile. He was very polite to the faceless man. He clasped his hands and thanked him. At this moment, the faceless man's hair danced wildly, and the sickle in his hand vibrated. He knew what Jiang Chun was going to do. He wanted nothing more than to slash with his sickle. "Senior, let me ask you another question. Before me, did someone called Lin Lang Wentian come in? Did he go up the mountain?" Jiang Chun asked. There was a person who called himself the Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion. He was very strong and very intelligent. The faceless man said, "He has been in the third mountain for a long time. Perhaps he had a fortuitous encounter." Is he really still alive? Jiang Chen was shocked. If he encountered Lin Lang Wentian after going up the third mountain, then was he going to be beaten to death? However, since he had already come this far, Jiang Chen had no other choice. He could only move forward. The legendary third mountain. I must go up and take a look, Jiang Chen said softly. He rose to his feet. However, as soon as Jiang Chen took his first step, the faceless man stopped him and said with a strange voice, I'll send you to the third mountain directly. Why? I haven't cracked the forbidding auras yet. Jiang Chen was startled. Why do you care? The faceless man said angrily. However, the faceless man was cursing Jiang Chen in his heart. If you weren't thinking of cracking the forbidding auras, why would I send you up directly? I was worried that you would destroy the forbidding auras. The faceless man was already infuriated after Qin Haodong destroyed the soul-absorbing formation. If he allowed Qin Haodong to destroy the forbidding auras, would the third mountain still be a threat? At that time, if his master was born and saw that his sect had been defiled as a servant, he would probably be reduced to ashes on the spot. I'm sorry about that. Jiang Chen rubbed his hands and said, Senior, you don't have to break the rules here for me. Don't worry, I can go up myself. Get out of my way. The faceless man couldn't take it anymore. He kicked Jiang Chen in the waist. The power of a demigod enveloped him and kicked Jiang Chen to the top of the third mountain. What a scourge! You're even more of a scourge than that damn Taoist priest, the faceless man muttered. However, he didn't expect a young Taoist priest to sneak into the third mountain right after he said that. The faceless man immediately noticed the young Taoist, and his bald face began to contort. What a coincidence. We meet again, Senior. The young Taoist priest smiled and rubbed his hands. I'm here to... You want to go up? I'll send you. The faceless man's chest heaved. He was really going to explode. He was still muttering about that damn Taoist priest. He didn't expect him to really come. Do you think this is your own King home? Chapter 605. The faceless man was about to go crazy. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have any facial features, one could see his twisted expression. This was too infuriating. He was the guardian general of the third mountain, but he was infuriated by two mortals. One of them had broken the soul-absorbing array, and now they wanted to break the restrictive spells. Were they here to demolish the place? The other one was even more despicable. He had been here before and had even used the third mountain as a storehouse to store several items. Two bastards. The faceless man cursed in his heart. If these two were together, they would definitely turn the clear water into a quagmire. What the faceless man didn't know was that when the young Taoist was sent to the top of the third mountain, Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. At the same time, the young Taoist was also dumbfounded. Jiang Chen? Muyuda? The two of them stared at each other. Neither of them had expected to meet the other here. What are you doing here? Jiang Chen asked. He had just arrived, and Muyuda was right behind him. This made Jiang Chen seriously suspect that Muyuda was following him. I'm here to get something, Muyuda said. What about you? I'm here to train. Jiang Chen said, you know the current situation. If I don't improve my cultivation, I'll probably die in this chaotic world. I think so too, Muyuda said seriously. Then, he walked to Jiang Chen's side and grabbed his hand. He said sincerely, do you know why I risked my life to come here? You're not here for me, are you? Jiang Chen frowned. He felt that Muyuda was not trustworthy. Of course. Muyuda nodded and said seriously, I'm here to get your physical body. Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to do until he started cursing. What a bastard you are. You hid my profound Sky Divine King's body here? This is the safest place in the world, Muyuda said. However, Jiang Chen didn't understand what Muyuda meant. Entering the third mountain was extremely dangerous. The guardian of the third mountain was a demigod, not to mention other things. They had to withstand 3 attacks from a demigod before they could move on. How could an ordinary person survive such a dangerous situation? So, if Muyud hid his body here, and if Muyud couldn't come back in the future, Wouldn't Jiang Qin's mysterious sky divine king's body be buried here forever? F***CKU. Are you trying to kill me? Jiang Chun was annoyed. Are we here now? Mu Yud was also feeling guilty. Truth be told, he was worried about whether or not he would be able to enter the third mountain. He does to the third mountain's range. Mu Yu is to have a look? ST to the end? TTSSS. He does this. Jiang Chen noticed it immediately. He straightened Mu Yu's head and made him look at him. Then, he stared into Mu Yu's eyes and asked, "What's wrong? Don't tell me you can't take it out?" "Impossible." Mu Yu shook his head. He felt even more guilty. He coughed a few times and said weakly, "It's just that the hiding place is a little hidden. I need some time." "Where did you hide it?" Jiang Chen asked. The peak of the third mountain wasn't big. It was about the size of a football field. There was also a small flat area here. Jiang Chen and Mu Yu were on the flat area. There were grass, trees, rocks, and a stone tablet. Behind the stone tablet was a cave. Other than that, there was nothing else. "Where else can we hide things here other than that cave?" Mu Yu said angrily. However, when Jiang Chun looked at the cave, he saw a restrictive spell glowing. There was also a peerless killing spell floating there. It was impossible for Jiang Chen to crack such tactical formations and restraining orders with his current strength. "You can go in?" Jiang Chen asked. "Not yet." Mu Yu was honest now. Since he had already said it, he didn't care. "Not yet. Then when can you go in?" Jiang Chun was anxious. "If you go in after 300 to 500 years, why would I need the body of the mysterious sky supreme being?" By then, either Jiang Chen was dead, or he had already become a supreme being. Every full moon, there will be a loophole in the restrictive spell and spell. "I could take the opportunity to go in and take your body out," Mu Yu said. Mu Yu touched his nose and looked at the sky. He mumbled, "Chong N's body is also in there. If Nian Chang'e hears this, he will beat you to death." Jiang Chen's face darkened. He and Nian Chang'e were really in the same boat. Their bodies were not only stolen by the same person, but they were also placed in the same place. "Then hurry up. I'm going to take a look around here," Jiang Chen said in a low voice. There didn't seem to be anything special on the peak of the third mountain. Jiang Chen didn't see Lin Lang Wentian either. However, everyone knew that Lin Lang Wentian was on the third mountain. So, where was he now? 3,000 dreams? At this moment, Jiang Chen walked up to the stele in front of the cave. He saw the 4 ancient words carved on the stele. Mu Yu walked over and explained, "Don't touch this stone tablet." "What's wrong?" Jiang Chen asked. "There is a special small world inside the stone tablet. Once you touch it, you will be pulled into the small world. In that small world, you will be in a daze, as if you were dreaming. If you don't wake up from the dream, you will be trapped until you die," Mu Yu said in a low voice. "You've been in there before?" Jiang Chun was surprised. Mu Yu was quite familiar with the third mountain. "No, I've never been in there before." Mu Yu shook his head and rolled his eyes. He pointed at the few lines of words below the stone tablet and said, "Are you blind? Isn't it written here?" "Air!" Jiang Chun looked embarrassed. After looking at the few lines of words carefully, a trace of excitement flashed across his eyes. This was because the small world within the stone tablet could also be considered as a training ground. Sleeping in that small world for a day was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for a year. If one slept in there for 100 years, how many years would it be equivalent to cultivating in the outside world? Thinking about it this way, going in and sleeping for a night was simply a great opportunity. A great opportunity! However, the stone tablet clearly stated that if one didn't wake up, they would be trapped in the small world forever until their lifespan ran out and they died. Moreover, there was a price to pay for entering the small world. Sleeping in there for a day would burn 10 years of one's lifespan. Chapter 606. If I don't wake up, I'll really die in there. Jiang Chen was shocked, but he was also scared. Jiang Chen needed to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. The small world in front of him was undoubtedly the best choice. Is glittering jewel Wentian inside? Jiangchen asked. How would I know? Muyuda said angrily. He frowned and guessed. I don't think he's in there. If he was, he wouldn't have come out until now. His lifespan would have been exhausted, and he would have died long ago. That's right, Jiangchen murmured. Then where was glittering jewel Wentian on the third mountain? Could it be in the cave? Jiangchen suddenly narrowed his eyes. If his guess was right, then his and Yin Changa's bodies. That's impossible, Muyuda murmured. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He didn't dare to think further. After all, if glittering jewel Wentian was really in the cave, then Jiangchen and Yin Changa's bodies would be in danger. The consequences, the karma, and the implications were too great. It's not a big deal for me. At worst, I'll lose a body, but if Yin Changa loses her true body, then... Jiangchen's heart was in his mouth. He was worried for Yin Changa. Muyuda was also anxious. If something happened to Yin Changa's body, her master, Taoist Tantian, would do it. At that time, Muyuda would be dead. Soon, it will be the night of the full moon in 5 days. Muyuda's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He prayed that nothing would happen to the 2 bodies in the cave. At this moment, Jiangchen was too lazy to think about it. What else could he do? Do you think I can go in? Jiangchen stared at the stone tablet. His heart was pounding. This was a great opportunity to improve his cultivation. If he could wake up, it would mean that he had cultivated for several years. Even if he couldn't, he could at least improve his cultivation level. What if he can't wake up? Muyuda asked. Can't wake up? Jiangchen whispered and smiled bitterly. If I can't wake up, then so be it. What else can I do? With my current cultivation, even if I go out now, I'll only die. I might as well take a gamble here. With that, Jiangchen paused for a moment before asking, the third mountain doesn't seem that dangerous. Not dangerous? Mu Yud's eyes widened. How is this not dangerous? How many people could withstand 3 moves from a demigod? Even if they did, how many of them would be able to pass through the soul-assimilating array? And after the soul-absorbing array, there were still restrictions. Behind the restrictions, there were even more dangers. The main reason Jiangchen was able to enter the third mountain this time was because the demigod guarding the mountain did not want to see Jiangchen destroy the restrictions. Therefore, he had kicked him up. If it was anyone else, they would probably be dead by now. As for Muyuda, he had been here before and had used some tricks. Otherwise, how could he enter this place so easily? One had to know that when the demigod guarding the mountain saw Muyuda, his face had darkened. Other dangers aside, just the dangers on the mountaintop alone are enough to take your life. Muyuda said in a low voice, on the night of the full moon, a special Tao will appear here. It is a destructive force. Even the gods might not be able to withstand it. That means in 5 days, the most dangerous time will arrive? Jiangchen was dumbfounded. That meant he could either leave this place now, enter the cave, or enter the small world inside the stone tablet. Other than that, there was no other way. I will enter the cave on the night of the full moon and come out on the next full moon. Why don't you come with me? Muyuda said. What's in the cave? Jiangchen was curious. The cave looked extraordinary. There had to be something good inside. However, when he remembered that Muyuda had entered the cave before, Jiangchen did not think much of it. How could there be anything good left in a place like that? If the third mountain could be taken away, Muyuda would have taken the entire mountain with him. There are many things inside, but I can't take them away, Muyuda mumbled. I've already taken everything that I can. What's left inside? Jiangchen pursed his lips. He had guessed that Muyuda had destroyed the cave. The third mountain was known as a forbidden area. One could only enter, but not leave. However, who would have thought that Muyuda had not only entered it, but it was also not his first time. Moreover, he had taken away many treasures inside the cave. There's a tablet, a futon, and a scroll. There's nothing else, Muyuda said. Those 3 things can't be taken away. Someone has branded them there. Is there anything special about those 3 things? Jiangchen asked. The thing that was imprinted here was definitely extraordinary. However, Muyuda had observed them before. but he could not find anything special about them. In Muyuda's eyes, anything that could not be taken away was trash. Anything that did not belong to him was not considered trash. They're just trash. Don't worry about them, Muyuda said. Then, I'll enter the small world inside the tablet. Zhangchen said, I'll adjust myself first. 5 days later, on the night of the full moon, you enter the cave, and I'll enter the small world inside the tablet. Think about it carefully, Muyuda said in a low voice. Zhangchen's current lifespan was about 60,000 years. 60,000 years of lifespan might seem like a lot, but in the world of cultivators, it was not much. Especially in the small world inside the tablet, it was like a few pieces of firewood that could burn out at any time. I still have some rare treasures with me that can replenish my blood chi and increase my lifespan. I'll eat them all. Zhangchen said, my lifespan will reach more than 100,000 years. I hope you can wake up. Muyuda mumbled, I'll give you 1,000,000 years of lifespan. But what's the point if you can't wake up? In the end, the two of them did not say anything else and prepared themselves. 5 days later, on this day, a layer of purple mist appeared in the sky above the third mountain. Obscure runes flickered in the purple mist like purple stars. The runes were very bright and emitted an extremely violent aura. Just as Muyuda had said, on the night of the full moon on the third mountain, this place would be filled with the destructive power of the Great Path. And these runes were the embodiment of the destructive power of the Great Path. It's fine during the day, but when the moon rises, these runes will fall like the stars, Muyuda said in a low voice. Muyuda said in a deep voice, when the time comes, you'll be able to enter by touching the stone tablet, but I'll have to hurry. If I can't enter the cave when the runes fall, I'll be finished. You've already entered once. Can't you enter a second time? Who are you trying to fool? Zhangchen squinted and said coldly, if anything happens to the body inside, I'll skin you alive and throw you into the river of forgetfulness. Chapter 607. Time passed, and night finally fell on the third mountain. The moment the moon rose, Jiang Chun pressed his palm against the stone steel without hesitation. Instantly, a terrifying pulling force erupted, dragging Jiang Chun into the little world of the stone steel. Muyud saw all of this, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He touched his chest and asked himself, does your conscience hurt? Muyud had been here once, and he had been here even earlier than Lin Lang Wentian. At that time, Muyud was in seclusion in the cave, and his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. After that, he came out and entered the blood path. What he didn't tell Jiang Chun was that not long after he entered the cave, he sensed that someone had also entered the third mountain and entered the little world of the stone steel. That person was most likely Lin Lang Wentian. It's been so many years. Lin Lang Wentian must have died in there. Muyud muttered, if you really find Lin Lang Wentian alive in there, I'll burn some incense for you and dig a grave for you. I'll definitely bury you properly. With that, Muyud deactivated the spell formation outside the cave and charged inside. Buzz! A few breaths later, the entire third mountain trembled, and a destructive power of the great Tao erupted, causing a purple mist to rise. It was a purplish hue that looked like hell, and it seemed to be stained with blood. The destructive power landed on the third mountain, but it couldn't destroy a single blade of grass or tree. If one looked closely, they would see that the power had entered the mountain. The faceless man raised his head and looked at the purple mist that filled the sky. He whispered, Master, when will you be born? There was no doubt that there was a living being in the third mountain, and it was extremely powerful. This living being had been in the third mountain since ancient times, absorbing the destructive power of the great Tao. It was unknown whether it was cultivating or transforming. In any case, the third mountain had become a forbidden area because of this living being. In the past, the godless continent had experienced a few dark upheavals. The deities of the heavens had descended, and the kings of the other lands had come. However, none of them had entered the third mountain. Even during the darkest era, the third mountain was still as peaceful as ever. It was easy to imagine the reason behind this. Both the deities and the kings of the other lands were extremely wary of the living being in the third mountain. Where is this place? At this moment, in the small world of the stone tablet, Jiangchen looked at the scenery in front of him in a daze. Looking around, this place was very small. There was only a lake, and beside the lake was a pavilion. Other than that, there was nothing else. This place looked ordinary, but what was so special about it? Why are there still people here? Suddenly, Jiang Chen's eyes narrowed as he saw a middle-aged man sitting cross-legged in the pavilion. His life aura was very weak, but his entire body was emitting divine light, and there was even a wisp of divine aura pervading the air. This was a demigod. No one has ever stepped into this place since ancient times, right? Jiang Chen muttered. Then, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He roared in a deep voice, "Mu Yud, you tricked me?" Jiang Chun was not stupid. In a place like this, who else could it be other than Lin Lang Wen Tian? However, Jiang Chun did not expect Mu Yud to trick him. Why didn't he tell him about this in advance? Fortunately, Lin Lang Wen Tian's current state was not quite right. It was as if he was dead and did not notice Jiang Chen's arrival at all. Moreover, although Lin Lang Wen Tian had broken through to become a demigod, his lifespan had decreased sharply and was almost exhausted. After so many years, he still has some lifespan left. Jiang Chun was shocked. How strong was Lin Lang Wen Tian when he was at his peak? How strong was the blood qi in his body? Otherwise, how could he have lasted until now? However, it seemed that Lin Lang Wen Tian would not wake up. "I'll send you on your way," Jiang Chun said softly, and a cold smile appeared on his face. There was a battle after all. With such a good opportunity in front of him, how could Jiang Chun not make a move? However, before Jiang Chun could make a move, a ripple appeared on the surface of the lake. After the ripple spread, a blurry figure slowly rose from the surface of the lake. Like a ghost, he floated over and slowly landed in front of Jiang Chun. An ancient yet mysterious aura filled the air. "What do you want?" Without waiting for Jiang Chun to speak, the creature stared at Jiang Chun and asked directly. "Ah!" Jiang Chun was stunned. Were all creatures nowadays so direct? He was embarrassed. "Of course I want to become stronger," Jiang Chun said snappily. "Otherwise, who would be willing to burn their lifespan to come here? I have 3,000 cultivation methods here, all of which are supreme techniques. 3,000 Dao skills, all of which are supreme techniques. You can choose at will. Once you're done, you can leave," the blurry creature said. After saying that, he waved his hand. 3,000 cultivation methods and 3,000 Dao skills were neatly arranged in front of Jiang Chun. At this moment, Jiang Chun was a little confused. Putting aside these cultivation methods, just these 3,000 Dao skills were enough to shake the entire world, right? One had to know that even in the Nine Heavens divine realm, there probably weren't so many Dao skills, right? Are you playing with me? How can there be so many Dao skills? Jiang Chun squinted, feeling that this creature was like a liar. "If you don't believe me, take a look and you'll know." The creature smiled and said, "The world is ignorant. How can they know my methods? I'll take a look then." Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows and casually picked a book. Then, Jiang Chen's eyes widened because the Dao skill he picked was the little 6 fingers that he cultivated. This could be a coincidence. Maybe you know that I cultivate the little 6 fingers. Jiang Chun did not believe in evil and picked a few books in succession. In the end, Jiang Chun was shocked. It was all because when he carefully observed and comprehended them, he confirmed that they were all genuine Dao skills. There are even cultivation methods here, more powerful than any cultivation method in the world today. The creature said, "Pick a cultivation method, 3 Dao skills, and you can leave." "So good?" Jiang Chun was moved and subconsciously asked, "Is there a lacking earth formula?" As soon as these words came out, the creature staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Jiang Chun. His eyes were like 2 lanterns. He stared at Jiang Chun. After a good while, he said in a muffled voice, Can such a thing really exist? Cultivation methods. I only want the lacking earth formula. Since there are none here, what am I picking? Jiang Chun said unhappily. There are quite a lot of them, but none of them are suitable for me. This is the great Yin Tian formula, the #1 cultivation method in the ancient times. This is the Heaven and Earth Heart Sutra, the #3 cultivation method in the ancient times. This is the #9 cultivation method in the dark years, the immortal formula. The creature seemed to be angry and took out a few cultivation methods and said, "Aren't these cultivation methods stronger than the one you're cultivating now?" Chapter 608. Big brother, are you stupid? I'm not here to choose a cultivation technique or a Tao technique. I'm here to... Jiang Chen had a strange expression as he muttered, "I'm here to sleep. It's written clearly on the stone tablet outside. Dream of 3,000. Jiang Chen said. Oh, I know, you're trying to take a shortcut. The creature seemed to be enlightened. He pointed at Lin Lang Wentian in the pavilion and said, You want to be like him? Reincarnation in the dream? Reincarnation in the dream? Jiang Chen asked curiously. In the dream, you'll experience several reincarnations in different lives. If you can wake up from the dream of several reincarnations, then the cultivation you've cultivated in those lives will fuse together and fuse with your current life. The creature said, Yes, that's what I want. Jiang Chen nodded hurriedly. You can't, right? The creature curled his lips and said disdainfully, Do you know how long he had when he entered this place? A full 1,360,000 years. What? Jiang Chen's heart twitched a few times. 1,360,000 years. What kind of concept was that? Even a god couldn't live that long, right? How did Lin Lang Wentian do it? Could it be that he took the elixir of immortality? Or the elixir of immortality? Otherwise, how could he have such a long lifespan before becoming a god? Your mere 10 years of lifespan can at most be reincarnated 3 times in the dream. The creature said, Even if you can wake up, what's the use of reincarnating 3 times? The power of 3 reincarnations can at most raise your cultivation to the 4th or 5th decay of the celestial being. That's enough, Jiang Chen whispered. As long as I have the 4th decay of the celestial being, I have the confidence to fight against a demigod. If I reach the 5th decay of the celestial being, even a demigod might not be able to suppress me. But what if you can't wake up? The creature asked. Can't wake up? Jiang Chen frowned and shook his head. I've never thought about it. If I can't wake up, so be it. What else can I do? Life will pass just like that. You really don't want these? You would rather risk your life? This creature asked. What do I need these for? If this is the general trend, I can accept it. But now, I have no other choice but to quickly improve my cultivation. Jiang Chen said in a low voice, his heart filled with infinite helplessness. If he had enough time, why would Jiang Chen take the risk? If Jiang Chen had enough time, he would be able to practice peacefully. One day, he would be able to return to his peak state. But now, was he given the time? Since you've already decided, then you can go on your way. This creature said softly. He pointed at the pavilion and said, Once you enter, you can sleep. However, whether or not you can wake up after this sleep is up to you. Then Jiang Chen looked at Lin Lang Wentian, wishing he could kill him right there and then. However, this living being told Jiang Chen that there was a restriction here. Otherwise, they would be obliterated by the rules here. Sooner or later, I'll kill him with my own hands. Jiang Chen said coldly. Finally, Jiang Chen came to the front of the pavilion. However, he suddenly turned around and looked at the mysterious living being. He asked, Who are you? Me? Of course, I'm the owner of this place. This living being smiled and said, In all 8 directions, only I reign supreme. Ha! You're bluffing. Jiang Chen curled his lips. When the time came for him to reign supreme, would he still be here? Moreover, this living being's current state was obviously not right. It was like a broken soul. In such a state, he still claimed to reign supreme? T. Seeing that Jiang Chen did not believe him, this living being smiled and did not explain further. Then, Jiang Chun stepped forward and entered the pavilion. Not too long ago, the only person who could compete against me actually ended up in such a state. The vicissitudes of time truly make one unable to fathom life. The creature let out a long sigh. His figure gradually dimmed until he disappeared. At this moment, after Jiang Chun entered the pavilion, a wave of sleepiness attacked him. Then, he fell into a deep sleep and underwent the so-called reincarnation in the dream. At the same time, in the outside world, on the godless continent, the 18 families had recently made a move again. After they ruled the underworld and the barren state, they began to move towards the Zhou dynasty. During this period, all the sects, families, and forces they passed by either surrendered or were destroyed. Finally, a month later, on this day, outside the imperial city of the Zhou dynasty, the top experts of the 18 families all gathered here. Behind them were not only array masters, boundary masters, but also restriction masters. There were also countless generals and traders who had pledged allegiance to the 18 families. Looking around, there were more than 10,000 people outside the imperial city. Moreover, their cultivation levels were not low. The weakest was at the upper level of the immortal state. Now on the godless continent, there are not many forces that still have the strength to struggle. Apart from the Jiang family, the martial pavilion, upper and lower universe, and highest heaven, only your Zhou dynasty is left. Amongst the strong cultivators of the 18 clans, the leader of the group smiled coldly and said, "Today, we're going to destroy the Central Continent's dynasty. Tomorrow, we're going to destroy the martial pavilion. We're going to destroy the continent of the 9 clouds." They're just a bunch of traitors. They have been trapped on the path of blood for so many years and still don't know how to repent. Li Fengzi stood on the city wall, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Li Fengzi, now that the general trend is irresistible, the Zhou dynasty can't stop the footsteps of the 18 families. I advise you to quickly surrender to avoid being exterminated. A sect leader who had surrendered to the Zhou dynasty shouted, "You are just a young boy. It is already a great fortune to be able to sit on the throne of the emperor. Today, if you surrender, you will still be the emperor of the Zhou dynasty." Li Fengzi, surrender. The 18 families will unify the godless continent sooner or later. We are powerless to resist. We can only surrender. Many people persuaded. There were even elders of sects who were on good terms with the Zhou dynasty who stood out, hoping that Li Fengzi would surrender. However, Li Fengzi was full of smiles. He slowly turned around, and his gaze fell on the distant third mountain. "If he returns, the world will be peaceful," Li Fengzi whispered. After saying this, Li Fengzi turned around again and looked at the enemies in front of him. He said, "The battlefield of the Zhou dynasty is not here." "What do you mean?" "What?" Everyone was puzzled. The army had already arrived at the imperial city. Was this not the battlefield? Just as everyone was puzzled, a tremor sounded out of nowhere. Then, everyone saw a huge teleportation formation appear in the sky above the imperial city. When the teleportation formation appeared, formations and barriers were formed. There were even restrictions that appeared and sealed off the entire imperial city. In the next moment, under everyone's horrified gaze, the entire imperial city rose from the ground and entered the teleportation formation as if the entire clan was ascending. If I have the chance to return one day, the Li clan will still have the final say in the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty hasn't been destroyed. It's just that today, we have to go on an expedition. The date of return is uncertain. Li Fengzi said. Imperial draconic qi surrounded his body. He wore a crown on his head and held an ancient true dragon sword in his hand. He left a final impression on the world. Perhaps he was the last emperor of the Zhou dynasty. Perhaps he wasn't the strongest emperor of the Zhou dynasty. But at least today, he didn't surrender. Chapter 609. The sky was filled with multicolored light. The huge teleportation array collided with the void, and a space-time passageway appeared like a divine bridge. The entire imperial city rose from the ground and entered the space-time passageway under everyone's gaze. The dynasty had disappeared in the end. Some people were puzzled. Where did the Central State dynasty go? Would they come back in the future? Some people were shocked. What kind of method was this to move the entire Central State dynasty away? Of course, there were also people who were excited and even happy. This group of people were from the 18 families. They knew where the Central State dynasty had gone. Naturally, it was the Eternal City. The Eternal City has issued an alliance order. It seems like it can't hold on anymore. Great! The Eternal City has been broken. When we open the door of darkness, we will cooperate with the outside. Not to mention the godless continent. The entire Nine Heavens divine world will have to submit to the Spirit Clan. The Spirit Clan. They are the supreme beings of the world. They should have unified the 6 realms and 6 paths. The 18 families were extremely excited. The creatures of the foreign land were called the Spirit Clan. Continue to advance. Next target, the Martial Pavilion. The 18 families were majestic. Without the obstruction of the Central State dynasty, they occupied the entire Central State. As for the Central State, it was connected to the entire godless continent. Now, they could go wherever they wanted to go without any obstruction. However, when they arrived at the Martial Pavilion, they found that the entire pavilion had disappeared. There was no one left in the Martial Pavilion. Even the mountain gate had disappeared. In the sky above the Martial Pavilion, the void had not yet closed. They could vaguely see a huge teleportation array still rotating. Looks like the Eternal City can't hold on anymore. Within a day, the Central State Dynasty and the Martial Pavilion have been teleported to the Eternal City. The heavens are helping us. Without the Central State Dynasty and the Martial Pavilion, who can stop the 18 families in this world? Everyone laughed wildly. They were extremely arrogant. They saw the hope of victory. No, to be exact, in the eyes of the 18 families, victory had always belonged to them. Only the Zhang family, the 9 Heavens, and the upper and lower Qingquan sect are left. Other than them, there are no other sects in this world that can compete with us. Who should we choose next? The upper echelons of the 18 families were discussing, but it was hard for them to make a decision. The Qingquan sect and the upper and lower Qingquan sect were the same. Once a battle broke out, it would be a battle against the 2 top sections. On the other hand, the Zhang clan was known as a clan with the inheritance of a deity. They had a very deep foundation, and they couldn't start a war at will. In that case, the best place to start a war right now would be the 9 Clouds Heavens. However, the continent of the 9 Clouds had always been mysterious. They rarely showed themselves, so nobody knew how deep the continent of the 9 Clouds was. But now, looking at the situation on the surface, 9 Clouds Heaven was indeed the easiest to bully. Besides, the continent of the 9 Clouds wasn't far from the Martial Pavilion. It was in a small world. Let's go to the continent of the 9 Clouds. Finally, the leaders of the 18 clans came to a decision. Their next target was the 9 Clouds Heavens. That day, godless continent's creatures were terrified, their hearts incomparably cold. The Central Plains Empire and the Martial Pavilion had left. Now, only the 9 Clouds sect, the upper and lower Qingquan sect, and the Zhang family were left. If these 4 forces did not join forces, how could they resist the 18 families? But what was surprising was that when the 18 families arrived outside the continent of the 9 Clouds Heavens, the upper and lower Qingquan sect and the Zhang family did not help. For a moment, many people sighed. The godless continent was at the brink of destruction. What were these sects still worried about? Were they still unwilling to join forces? The godless continent's momentum is gone. Someone looked up at the sky and sighed, his heart filled with sorrow. Some people even thought of the flowing sky world. In the future, would the godless continent also become like the flowing sky world, broken and become a broken world? What's more, from now on, there would be no godless continent. Retreat! Oh no! However, half a day later, Someone used a secret technique to see the scene outside the continent of the nine clouds heavens. The expressions of the powerhouses of the 18 families changed drastically, and they quickly left with a group of subordinates. At the same time, in the continent of the nine clouds, an old man stood above the mountain gate. When he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be fragments of the great path flowing in them. His eyes were like the sea, and his pupils were like stars, illuminating the entire continent of the nine clouds. A demigod. There's a demigod in the continent of the nine clouds. Many people were astonished. They were extremely excited. They had thought that the continent of the nine clouds was going to be destroyed. They had thought that the godless continent was going to be destroyed. They had never thought that the continent of the nine clouds would have such a strong foundation. A bunch of traitors, shouted the demigod of the continent of the nine clouds at the top of the mountain. Then his silhouette disappeared. On that day, a terrifying battle occurred in the direction of the underworld continent. Two demigods were fighting fiercely. Without a doubt, the demigod of the continent of the nine clouds was extremely aggressive and extraordinary. He directly went to the underworld continent and started fighting with the demigod of the 18 families. This battle lasted for a long time, a total of 10 days. 10 days later, the demigod of the continent of the nine clouds was covered in blood and disappeared into an empty space. The demigod of the 18 families had half of his body broken and was in a coffin. The godless continent will be destroyed sooner or later, shouted one of the demigods in the coffins of the 18 families. He was still awake, so he couldn't fight. The other demigod hadn't fully recovered, so his fighting strength wasn't at its peak. He was also injured. It would take a long time for him to come out. The Wangchuan River is the border. The south of the Wangchuan River is the godless continent. The north of the Wangchuan River is the north of the Wangchuan River. What do you think? Said the demigod of the continent of the nine clouds. When he said that, the people of the world were moved. Everyone understood what he meant. The continent of the nine clouds was afraid. They couldn't destroy the 18 families. They just wanted to protect half of the godless continent. Are you qualified to talk about conditions with us? Heh, what a joke. The godless continent will be ours, said the two demigods. They didn't agree. However, at that moment, the barbarian king appeared in the world. He stood in the air. His godly aura was vast and mighty. Above his head, a passage to the godly world of the nine clouds appeared. It was the passage that led to his ascension. Now, he was going to ascend and become a real god. However, the barbarian king formed a hand seal and suppressed the godly power in his body. He raised his head and looked at the passage. He laughed wildly and said, I, the barbarian king, will not become a god. Boom! As soon as he said that, the barbarian king broke the passage with a punch, cutting off the path of ascension. Why, ancestor, why are you doing this? You've been cultivating for countless years. Now that the path to becoming a god has been opened, why don't you go? Everyone in the barbarian race was moved. Some people sighed. They knew why the barbarian king was doing this. It was for the godless continent. It was for the entire barbarian race. Chapter 6:10. I was born at the wrong time, but it's what I am now. The barbarian king murmured. Henceforth, I'll fight to the death with the two demigods of your 18 clans. With the river of forgetfulness as the boundary, the godless continent will be to the south, and the holy ones to the north. The barbarian king's threat caused the 18 clans to bow their heads and agree to the terms of the demigod from the highest heavens. Furthermore, they called themselves the Holy Ones. What was holy? Holy and flawless, pure and untainted. How shameless is this? How dare these traitors call themselves the Holy Ones? I hate them. If the godless continent had a few more demigods, these traitors wouldn't be so arrogant. Of course, in such a situation, becoming a demigod was already an impressive feat. In fact, under normal circumstances, there was no such thing as a demigod. For example, the barbarian king had cut off his path to godly ascension, and only then had he become a demigod. As for the demigod from the highest heavens, he had been a survivor of the ancient epic and had become a demigod back then. But now he couldn't. Therefore, it was easier said than done to create a few more demigods. In fact, it was almost impossible. Master, are you really not going to make a move? Meanwhile, back in the Heavenspan God Temple, Nien Changa was looking at Taoist Heavenspan suspiciously. Given the level of Taoist Heavenspan's cultivation base, even a true god would have to kneel before him, much less a demigod. And yet, for some reason, Taoist Heavenspan had never made a move. The world isn't as simple as you think. Taoist Heavenspan sighed. If I make a move, someone else will. When the time comes, this war won't just be a small squabble between a few demigods. It'll involve even more powerful experts. There's actually a living being in this world who can stand up to you, Master. Nien Changa said in shock and disbelief. When have I ever been invincible? Taoist Heavenspan said with a wry smile. I've never been invincible, and I've never been defeated. There will always be opponents in this world. Well, what if the godless continent really falls? Nien Changa asked. That will be the fate of the godless continent, Taoist Heavenspan said. Fate is something that you can't see clearly or understand. Hope that someone can change it. Heavenly defying fate? Nien Changa asked. Defying the heavens and changing one's fate? Which cultivator doesn't defy heaven and change their fate? Pursing his lips, Taoist Heavenspan continued. I'm talking about changing the current situation. With that, Taoist Heavenspan looked in the direction of the third mountain. His lips curled into a slight smile. You're pretty patient, you old bag of bones. After all these years, you're still a coward, and you're still practicing your so-called boundless technique. What a joke! What a joke! Suddenly, a furious roar rang out in the sky above the heavenly god palace. Then, an illusory figure appeared. This creature was the creature that had risen from the lake in the stone tablet's small world. Oh my, look at you now, Taoist Heavenspan said. Are you trying to cultivate? Or are you trying to hurt yourself? This sovereign's unmatched divine technique is about to reach the great success stage. At that time, in the heavens above and earth below, only I will reign supreme. This creature was extremely domineering. However, after he finished speaking, he suddenly looked at Nien Changa and waved his hand. 3,000 cultivation methods and 3,000 Tao techniques appeared before Nien Changa. He said, Kid, I see that your talent is extraordinary. Why don't you pick a few and inherit my legacy? You're trying to steal my apprentices? Taoist Heavenspan's face flickered, and his eyes turned bloodshot. Unleashing a palm strike, he sent the creature tumbling backward. You're a master of swindling and swindling, you old bag of bones. If you come back to my Heavenspan God Palace again, I'll flatten your third mountain. T-Sich. How stingy. The creature vanished into the void, where he said, When that day comes, it's hard to say whether we'll be friends or foes. I'll be looking forward to it, Taoist Heavenspan said softly. Nien Changa didn't say anything, and simply stood there in a daze. After all, the conversation between Taoist Heavenspan and that creature was far beyond anything he could imagine. Furthermore, there was no way he could get a word in edgewise. How are your friends doing? Taoist Heavenspan asked. In response, Nien Changa sighed, and his eyes filled with grief. Yes, he had rescued Zaitsong and the others, but it had been too late, and now there was no way to save them. In fact, it was likely that they would all perish in the near future. Back in the day, they had been so powerful that even the gods in heaven would avoid them. Who could have imagined that they would end up like this? Give them a proper burial. Taoist Heavenspan's expression didn't change in the slightest. Patting Nien Changa on the shoulder, he said, You'll get used to it. Master, Nien Changa said, but didn't know what to say. He could sense that Taoist Heavenspan was filled with grief, perhaps even more so than he was. However, Taoist Heavenspan did a good job of concealing that grief. Perhaps Taoist Heavenspan had lost his best friend a long time ago. Time passed. Half a year had passed since Jiangchun had entered the third mountain. During that time, the godless continent and the holy race had never crossed the river of forgetfulness. It was almost as if the fighting had stopped and the world was at peace. However, the living beings of the godless continent still remembered that the other side of the river of forgetfulness had once been their home. Not good. The forbidden art of godfall. On this day, the barbarian king and the demigods of the highest heaven looked in the direction of the underworld continent, which was shrouded in the color of blood and darkness. A spell formation appeared in the air, accompanied by the howling of 100 ghosts and the appearance of divine Tao magical laws. Divine light fell from the sky, accompanied by a rain of blood. Within the spell formation stood two figures, absorbing the blood and divine light. They're creating gods, creating demigods. The barbarian king and the demigods of the highest heaven looked extremely serious. This forbidden art had long been lost, and they had never imagined that the holy race would still have people who knew it. This meant that the holy race would be able to produce several demigods in a short time. The godless continent and the holy race were originally evenly matched. But now that the forbidden art of godfall had appeared, the balance would be broken. When that happened, would the river of forgetfulness's boundary still count? It failed. Those two couldn't withstand the power of the forbidden art. 3 days later, the two figures in the spell formation exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Clearly, using a forbidden art to create gods was very dangerous and difficult to succeed. But if it succeeded, the balance between the two sides would be broken. And since the holy race had used such a forbidden art, it meant that they wouldn't stop until they created demigods. Are there demigods in the Jiang family and the upper and lower Qingquan sect? The demigod of the highest heaven sighed, feeling that there was little hope. If those three sects really had demigods overseeing them, they would have taken action long ago. Why wait until now? In that case, the only demigods on the godless continent who could fight were him and the barbarian king. Chapter 611. The sacred race's methods were extraordinary, and they were even more desperate. They would rather sacrifice their own people to create a demigod. The demigod of the highest heaven sat in the mountain gate. His injuries had yet to recover, so he could only watch the sacred race's actions. He wanted to stop them, but in his current state, it would be futile. He might even lose his life. The most important thing was that even if he lost his life, he might not be able to stop the sacred race. Not for becoming a god, not for the world, but for the barbarian race to exist on this land for a long time. On this day, all the living beings on the godless continent heard the barbarian king's long roar. A 7-colored cloud danced in the air as the barbarian king stepped out, and a divine light path pierced through the void. His tall and sturdy figure was suffused with divine light as he stepped on the divine light path. Beside him, chanting sounds were like ancient and obscure scriptures. Beneath his feet were golden lotuses. Above his head, a dim divine spark floated. He walked step by step, and with every step his aura strengthened. After a dozen breaths of time, he crossed half of the godless continent and arrived at the underworld continent. A group of traitors. Today I, the barbarian king, will experience your methods. The barbarian king shouted as he raised his palm and slowly lowered it. Great Tao runes lingered on his palm, and a divine aura erupted. The void was crushed, and even the light of the great Tao was distorted. This palm strike was like a mountain, and it smashed down towards the formation formed by the Skyfall forbidden technique. Barbarian king, you are courting death. Fine, you will die in the end. Today, I will make you stay here forever. At this moment, the demigod of the sacred race had completely awakened. His blood energy soared into the sky, and the aura of the divine Tao surged. With a raise of his hand, it was as if the sun, moon, and stars were annihilated under his feet. He was too strong. He was a living being from several eras ago. In the past, when he was at his peak, he was no weaker than the gods. He was no weaker than a chief god. If it weren't for the battle in the flowing celestial world, his cultivation wouldn't have fallen to such a level. However, although his cultivation realm had fallen, his Tao heart still existed. He was much more powerful than the average demigod. I have lived for tens of thousands of years, but in front of you, I can only be considered a junior. The barbarian king whispered, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. His palm didn't stop as it continued to press towards the array formation. Since you know you're a member of the junior generation, then where did you get the courage to fight me? The demigod pointed out with his finger. Unexpectedly, it was Little Six Fingers. Little Six Fingers shot out with the power of the six paths, piercing a hole through King Brute's palm. Moreover, this finger seemed to be able to wither everything. After the barbarian king's palm was pierced through, his arm and half of his body rapidly aged, withered, and withered. I, the king of barbarians, am the only one. I want to conquer the world alone. The barbarian king roared. His hair danced in the wind, and his tall and sturdy body grew bigger and bigger. He knew that he was no match for him. At this moment, he burned his Tao fruit and burned his cultivation. He sacrificed the great Tao in exchange for a short period of glory and peak. A few breaths later, he did it. It was as if he had transformed into a giant. His aura was comparable to that of a true deity. With a palm strike, he shattered a corner of the array formation. At the same time, a stream of fire burst out from his eyes and pierced through the demigod's body. You're self-destructing. I don't need to do anything. You won't be able to survive today, the demigod said coldly. However, the demigod still wanted to attack, because if he didn't attack, the array formation would be destroyed. If the array formation was destroyed, it would be difficult for the sacred race to create a god in a short period of time. I, the king of the barbarian race's Tilia clan, have the surname Tuoba and the name Wantian. The barbarian king roared, I don't care about the people of the world. I just want the people of the world to know that we will fight against all enemies. We are not afraid of anyone. Boom! The moment he finished speaking, the barbarian king's entire body burned. He turned into a meteor and crashed into the array formation. With a loud explosion, the sky changed color. A rain of blood fell from the sky, accompanied by a divine light. A divine spark also shattered. The barbarian king self-destructed to destroy the array formation. However, when the rain of blood that filled the sky disappeared, when the divine light dissipated, they saw that the demigod was holding a worn-out umbrella and blocking the array formation. Half of his body was tattered, and even his soul was dim. However, he was laughing. Barbarian king, you can be a god, but you have to self-destruct to die. The demigod laughed wildly. You didn't expect that I have a treasure like the Chinquin umbrella in my hands, right? The Chinquin umbrella was formed from a cloud in the chaos. It was nurtured by heaven and earth and was forged into an umbrella by later generations. The Chinquin umbrella could accommodate and absorb all things. After the barbarian king self-destructed, most of the power that erupted was neutralized by the Chinquin umbrella. As for the rest, some of them struck the array formation, while some of them struck the demigod's body. But no matter what, the demigod was still alive. Although the array formation was incomplete, it could be repaired in a short period of time. Patriarch. Barbarian king. At this moment, the entire barbarian race was in grief. Even the creatures on the godless continent sighed, their hearts filled with sorrow. The sects, families, and forces that had grudges against the barbarian race were also sighing. The barbarian king, a person who could become a god, had fallen just like that. His surname is Tuoba, and he's from the 6th clan of the barbarian race. His name is Wantian. Tuoba Wantian. This day was remembered by the world, but it was also sad. I'm not the only one left. At this moment, in the mountain gate of the highest heavens, the demigod sighed a few times. He slowly got up and said to a young man beside him, From now on, the highest heavens will be handed over to you. You've returned from the path of blood, and your cultivation has increased greatly. You can take on this heavy responsibility. Patriarch, you. The young man's eyes narrowed. He was the saint of the highest heavens that Jiang Chun had met on the path of blood. It's time to go. Burning my last bit of blood can be considered as returning the favor to the godless continent. The demigod sighed. What can I do when I'm alone? I can only stall for time. Maybe a miracle will happen. Patriarch, you want to die? Cried the saint of the highest heavens. He hastily shook his head and said, If you die, there will be no more demigods on the godless continent. What's the difference between having a demigod and not having a demigod in the current situation? The demigod smiled wryly. Sometimes I keep thinking that if Lin Lang Wentian was still alive, maybe the world would still be so peaceful. In the peace, there is a trace of war, a trace of disobedience, and a trace of chaos. But in the end, it's all a war between the native creatures of the godless continent. But now, sigh. I miss that little guy. The demigod sighed deeply. At this moment, who would not have thought of the scene when the martial pavilion had united the godless continent? Unfortunately, it seemed that everything could not go back. Chapter 6:12. Although the martial pavilion had never truly unified the godless continent, they had the final say in all matters, big and small. But now, the martial pavilion was gone, and Lin Lang Wentian was gone. No sect could stand up and preside over the situation. In the past, many people wanted to overthrow the martial pavilion's rule, but now, many people wanted the martial pavilion to return. Just as the demigod from the highest heavens said, at least when the martial pavilion was still alive, the wars in the world were just small skirmishes. Let's go. At this moment, the demigod from the highest heavens stood up and tore through the void with his injured body. With the power of a demigod, he arrived in front of the formation in almost an instant. You dare to come? The demigod from the sacred clan raised his eyebrows and said contemptuously, How can you fight me with your injured body? Aren't you the same? You were seriously injured by the barbarian king. The demigod from the highest heavens whispered, No need to say more. Today, I'm here to die. Then I'll fulfill your wish. The demigod from the sacred clan said, and the Chinquin umbrella in his hand shook out. The void collapsed and the clouds were sucked in, and even the heaven and earth origin chi in this area disappeared. Divine light flickered on the Chinquin umbrella, and a fist that looked like it was made of gold burst out. The demigod from the highest heavens sighed. Without any hesitation, he burned his body and crashed into it. Are you all crazy? The demigod from the sacred clan exclaimed. He didn't bother to put away the Chinquin umbrella and turned to run. The power of a demigod's self-destruction was enough to destroy an area. And now, the demigod from the sacred clan was already seriously injured, and the Chinquin umbrella was incomplete. If he continued to stay, he would definitely die. Boom! After a few breaths, an explosion sounded, and everyone on the godless continent saw a divine light shoot into the sky. It was like the most dazzling fireworks that bloomed in an instant and then disappeared in an instant. The Chinquin umbrella collapsed, and half of the formation was destroyed, but the demigod was still there. The demigod from the highest heavens was dead, and not even a wisp of ash was left. The godless continent has no more demigods. Why should the sacred clan create another one? The demigod laughed wildly. Even without creating another one, the sacred clan can still unify the godless continent. However, there was a cold glint in the demigod's eyes. He had finally recovered after much difficulty, but he was severely injured one after another. Even his Chinquin umbrella was shattered. Although part of the formation still existed, it would take time to repair it. Most importantly, he wouldn't be able to fight during this period of time. He had to go into seclusion to heal his injuries. Do your best to repair the formation and create a demigod. When my brother and I come out of seclusion, it will be the day that the sacred clan unifies the godless continent. The demigod ordered before entering the coffin. At this moment, the hearts of all living beings on the godless continent were shrouded by a layer of haze. They felt powerless, helpless, and sorrowful. The two remaining demigods of the godless continent were gone just like that. As for the saints, they still existed. Moreover, the saints were still repairing the array formation, and the two demigods were still alive. Who in this world can stop them? Godless continent, is it finally going to fall? Long sighs and howls of anguish rang out continuously. There were even people who were terrified and had thoughts of surrendering. A month later, more than 30 sects on the godless continent had defected and betrayed the godless continent. This chilled even more people's hearts and made them feel even more helpless. Under such a situation, no one could protect themselves. Perhaps the only way out was to surrender. Fortunately, the saints had yet to make a move. They were repairing the formation and waiting for the two demigods to appear. During this period of time, everything seemed calm. However, everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. Once this storm arrived, it would cause the godless continent to fall into eternal damnation. Time slowly passed. Everything seemed calm. Only within the third mountain, there would be the sound of bells ringing from time to time, and the aura of gods would fill the air. Within the stone tablet's small world, in the pavilion, Jiang Chun and Lin Lang Wentian sat cross-legged. Both of them had fallen into a deep sleep. In the dream, Jiang Chun had no idea what he was doing. He had forgotten himself. He had experienced a lifetime and cultivated to the peak. When his lifespan was exhausted, he continued to reincarnate after death. As he continued to reincarnate in the dream, Jiang Chen's lifespan was also constantly decreasing. Now, he did not have much lifespan left. Looking carefully, Jiang Chen's hair was already gray and wrinkles appeared at the corners of his eyes. His originally tall and straight spine was also bent. At first glance, one would think that he was an old man past his prime. Looks like he won't wake up. The ethereal being stood on the lake and looked at Jiang Chun. He sighed and said, "Looks like this is your last lifetime. The outcome can't be changed. What 10 directions return to 1? It's all fake." The being sighed softly. In this world, there were not many people who knew Jiang Chen's true identity, and there were not many people who knew why Jiang Chen kept reincarnating. However, anyone who knew what Jiang Chen wanted to do. He wanted to transcend. The transcendence that Jiang Chen wanted was the dream of all cultivators. However, from ancient times until now, no one had achieved such transcendence. It was also because of that Jiang Chen kept reincarnating and cultivating, reincarnating one life after another. 9 is the limit. After this lifetime, you can no longer reincarnate, the being said softly. Actually, I also want to see what you look like when you reincarnate 9 lifetimes and 10 directions return to 1. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow it. Perhaps this is your fate. Suddenly, the being's expression changed, and his gaze landed on glittering Jewel Wentian. At this moment, wisps of divine aura were emitted from glittering Jewel Wentian. Moreover, this aura continued to gather, as if 3 flowers were gathering above his head. This was a sign that he was about to condense a divine spark. This kid is really something. He's actually going to become a god on land. The being exclaimed and said, "Not bad." Even in the darkest and most glorious era, his aptitude can be considered top-notch. He's awake. About half a month later, the being exclaimed because he saw that glittering Jewel Wentian had actually woken up. How many years had he been sleeping here? Just as his lifespan was about to dry up, he actually miraculously woke up. This is... Glittering Jewel Wentian opened his eyes. After reincarnating for several lifetimes in the dream, he could not distinguish between reality and fantasy. It was only when he saw the being in front of him that he reacted. "I succeeded?" Glittering Jewel Wentian was excited. Bells rang in his body, and the divine aura above his head condensed, turning into a divine spark that flickered. "You're just a half-god." The being sighed. "If you had woken up a little later, you might have really become a god on land. Now it's enough." Glittering Jewel Wentian stood up and said, "I'm not 1 step away from becoming a true god. Not even half a step away. Above half-gods and below gods." Chapter 613. Above a demigod and below a god. These words were like a joke in the ninth heaven divine world. But in the godless continent, how arrogant and confident were these words. However, this creature teased, "Oh, do you think you're invincible on the godless continent now? Isn't that so?" Lin Lang Wentian was stunned and dumbfounded. Back then, he dominated the godless continent as a Deva fifth decay and made the martial pavilion the leader of the godless continent. Now, he was above a demigod and below a god. With this strength, how could he not be invincible on the godless continent? Do you know the 18 families? They've come out, and now half of the godless continent belongs to them. This creature said, "You used to be very strong, but you weren't the strongest. The ancestor of the ninth heaven and the barbarian king of the barbarian tribe, which one of them wasn't stronger than you? It's just that they weren't willing to compete with you. Now, the ancestor of the ninth heaven is dead, and the barbarian king gave up the chance to become a god and died. But now, the strongest is still not you, but the 18 families." At this point, a cold light suddenly burst out from Lin Lang Wentian's eyes. "What? I've been reincarnated here for a few lifetimes. And after I came out, the world changed hands? That group of traitors," Lin Lang Wentian said in a deep voice. "It's them," this creature said mockingly. "Why? Do you want to compete with them?" "Compete? Are they worthy?" Lin Lang Wentian raised her eyebrows, as arrogant as ever. She waved her sleeve and said coldly, "They only deserve to die." After saying that, Lin Lang Wentian glanced at Jiang Chun beside her and whispered, "If he can wake up, I'll come and find him again." "Don't go and die," the creature said. "In the darkest and most glorious era, you're considered a top genius. If you die, I'll feel a little heartache. Old thing, although I don't know what you are, but one day, I'll surpass all of you and everything in this world," Lin Lang Wentian said. As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Lang Wentian's figure flashed and disappeared from the small world of the stone tablet. On this day, everyone on the godless continent watched as a tall, imposing man stepped out from the third mountain. There was a purplish gold path beneath his feet. Divine radiance suffused his body, and a divinity that flickered between light and darkness was even floating above his head. This was an existence between a demigod and a true god. He looks so familiar. There seems to be a portrait of this person in my clan. Are you blind? This was Lin Lang Inquires the Heavens. He was once the pavilion master of the martial pavilion, and it was because of him that the martial pavilion almost unified the godless continent. He's back. There's hope for this world. At this moment, the living beings on the godless continent were shaken, and they were extremely excited. Lin Lang Wentian, on the other hand, did not ask or care about anything. He continued to walk forward and did not say a word along the way. He slowly walked along the purple gold path and headed straight for the underworld continent. "That brat is out." Taoist Heavenspan was in Heavenspan God Temple, a look of surprise on his face. He really did not expect Lin Lang Wentian to wake up after experiencing several reincarnations in the dream. "That's Lin Lang Wentian?" Nian Changa frowned. "The person known as the strongest man in this era. He's not the strongest." Taoist Heavenspan pursed his lips. "The brute king who died previously was stronger than him, but he gave up the chance to become a god. Then, in his current state, can he fight against the 18 clans?" Nian Changa asked. "He should be able to." Taoist Heavenspan was not sure. He only told Nian Changa that the current Lin Lang Wentian was between a demigod and a true god. This cultivation state was much stronger than a demigod. However, among the 18 clans, the two demigods were once existences that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the godly king. Now, although their cultivation realm had fallen, their Tao fruits were still there. It would not be easy for Lin Lang Wentian to defeat the two demigods. Boom! Half a day later, when Lin Lang Wentian stepped into the underworld continent, terrifying explosions of battle could be heard. However, a day later, Lin Lang Wentian returned, seemingly unharmed. At the same time, There was news from the underworld continent that the godless continent was still bounded by the river of forgetfulness. Lin Lang Wentian did not win, nor did he lose. But to the godless continent, he still lost. Many people sighed. Lin Lang Wentian was very strong, but he could not do anything to the sacred ones. All sects, submit to me. On this day, after Lin Lang Wentian returned, he announced to the world that he wanted to rule the remaining half of the godless continent. He looked down on the world with his own strength. Even if the martial pavilion was no longer around, he still wanted to unify the godless continent. We are willing to submit. Submit! On this day, almost all the sects, clans, and forces submitted to Lin Lang Wentian. This was because in their hearts, Lin Lang Wentian was the last hope of the godless continent. However, under such circumstances, there were still a few sects that were unwilling to submit to Lin Lang Wentian. Among them were the Nine Clouds sect, the Upper and Lower Chinquan sect, and the Jiang family. The godless continent owes the godless continent a debt of gratitude to the godless continent. I naturally understand that you do not submit, Lin Lang Wentian said directly, but the Upper and Lower Chinquan sect and the Jiang family. What do you mean by not submitting? Do you want me to personally pay you a visit? Lin Lang Wentian was very domineering and arrogant. He understood a principle. If he wanted to be external, he had to first ensure internal security. You can't enter the Upper and Lower Chinquan sect's Chinquan formation. The sect master of the Upper and Lower Chinquan sect said directly, "We don't want to interfere in anything in the world. You can be the boss of the godless continent, and we can be our own free clouds and wild cranes." In that case, very good, Lin Lang Wentian said coldly. If you dare to cross the line, don't blame me for being ruthless. In the end, the Upper and Lower Chinquan sect were safe and sound, each in their own sect. However, the most mysterious Jiang family on the godless continent did not speak. With Lin Lang Wentian's character and temper, he naturally would not let the Jiang family off. On this day, Lin Lang Wentian came. He stood outside the Jiang family's mountain gate and punched out. It was as if the sun had fallen, shattering the Jiang family's mountain gate. Pavilion Master of the Martial Pavilion. What a powerful aura. The current head of the Jiang family walked out and stared at Lin Lang Wentian. He said, "What? Are you here to destroy my Jiang family today?" "I don't dare to say that I'm destroying you, but now that I've come out of seclusion, this world should be unified," Lin Lang Wentian said in a deep voice. As soon as these words were said, the current head of the Jiang family laughed mockingly and said, "Unify this world? Then why don't you go and destroy the so-called sacred clan first? You don't have the ability, yet you come to my Jiang family to vent your anger. Are you a true hero or a hypocrite? Or do you think that my Jiang family is afraid of you, Lin Lang Wentian?" Chapter 614. Lin Lang Wentian was born. He was above a demigod and below a true god. His strength was enough to intimidate everything. However, he was still unable to destroy this sacred clan. Now, the words of the Jiang family's current patriarch had undoubtedly hit the hardest spot for Lin Lang Wentian. "How dare you? What does it have to do with you?" Lin Lang Wentian was furious. She pointed at the Jiang family head and said, "Submit or be destroyed. Choose for yourself." The seventh-generation Jiang family head would like to exchange blows with the martial pavilion master today. The fourth-generation Jiang family head also has the same intention. Including me, the three patriarchs of the Jiang clan are all here. At this moment, two more elders walked out from the Jiang family's mountain gate. The three generations of Jiang family heads gathered together. This was the Jiang family's last trump card. However, these three people's cultivation was only at the peak of Deva 5th decay. They had yet to step into the demigod realm. "I'm not even afraid of the demigods, not to mention you," Lin Lang Wentian said contemptuously. "Since you insist, then from now on, there will be no Jiang family on the godless continent. The roots of the Jiang family are not here," the current generation Jiang family had said. He looked up at the sky with yearning in his eyes and said, "The roots of the Jiang family are there." "The Jiang family's inheritance comes from the ninth heaven?" Lin Lang Wentian raised her eyebrows, but the coldness in her eyes was still there. So what if it came from the ninth heaven divine realm? The martial pavilion was still the martial god, who came from the ninth heaven divine realm. Now, the martial god of the ninth heaven divine realm could be said to be one of the strongest gods. "You're wrong." The fourth generation Jiang family head shook his head and said, "The roots of the Jiang family are connected to the heavens." "What do you mean?" Lin Lang Wentian frowned. She had a bad feeling. "Connected to the heavens, what is that?" The seventh generation Jiang family head said mockingly, "Heaven and earth. The roots of the Jiang family are on the ground." "Speak clearly." The bad feeling in Lin Lang Wentian's heart grew stronger. The Jiang family was now on the ground, but why did these generations of family heads speak like that? Could it be that the ground they were talking about was not this ground? Was there another meaning? There's no need to say more. If the Jiang clan is destroyed today, not to mention the martial pavilion, even the martial god in the continent of the nine heavens won't be able to protect you, said the patriarch coldly. Today I want to see what other resources your Jiang clan has. Don't think that you can scare me with just a few words. Lin Lang Wentian shouted. Then, his fist radiance exploded and fell like a shining sun. The three generations of Jiang family patriarchs attacked together, but with just one punch, the three of them exploded and died in the air. In the face of Lin Lang Wentian, there was truly no one in this world who could contend against her. Jiang family? Yeah, just an ant. Today, I'll turn all of you into dust. Lin Lang Wentian said softly. She raised her palm, and like a heavenly canopy, it pressed down on the entire Jiang clan. With Lin Lang Wentian's cultivation, if this palm landed, the entire Jiang family would really be annihilated. At this moment, on a small mountain within the sect, Jiang Yueli's face was covered in tears. She was still young, but she saw the scene of 3 generations of Jiang family patriarchs dying at the same time. Although she was young, she was sensible. She knew that the current Jiang clan was about to be annihilated. Bad guy! Jiang Yueli wiped away her tears and shouted at Lin Lang Wentian, who was outside the sect, with a slightly childish voice. However, Lin Lang Wentian did not care about her at all. After all, in his eyes, what was the difference between a little girl with a low cultivation and an ant? Are you courting death? However, before the palm could land, a hurried and angry voice came from the void. Then, a purple mist rose and quickly turned black. It was as if a furnace had appeared out of nowhere and struck Lin Lang Wentian's palm. Boom! Along with an explosion, Lin Lang Wentian's palm shattered, but reassembled in an instant. At the same time, a young man in a Taoist robe and holding a dark purple gold furnace stood above the Jiang clan's mountain gate. "It's you, little Taoist!" Jiang Yueli exclaimed. She looked at the young man in the air and asked, "Where's Jiang Qin?" "Him? He's sleeping." The little Taoist smiled and patted his chest. His back was covered in cold sweat. This little Taoist was Mu Yuda. After he came out of the cave on the third mountain, he sensed that a great battle had broken out in the Jiang clan. At that moment, Mu Yuda panicked. He knew very well how Jiang Chun felt about Jiang Yueli. How could Mu Yuda not guess Jiang Yueli's identity? She was the reincarnation of the moon goddess from the ninth heaven divine realm. If the Jiang clan was annihilated today, Mu Yuda would not interfere at all. However, if Jiang Yueli died as well, Mu Yuda could not sit by and do nothing. He knew better than anyone that if Jiang Yueli died, with Jiang Qin's personality, the whole world would be buried with her. "It's you." "Impossible. You're already dead." Lin Lang Wentian's expression changed drastically. He stared at Mu Yuda as if he had seen a ghost. This reaction made Mu Yuda a little confused. "What are you talking about?" Mu Yuda asked. "I've seen your portrait in the ancient books. You're already dead. You died 10,000 years ago. Your physical body is suppressed on the first mountain under the netherworld. You can't be alive." Lin Lang Wentian seemed to have suffered a great blow. She roared with all her might, and her body kept retreating. Mu Yuda's eyes narrowed. How do you know that my physical body is suppressed on the first mountain? It was Taoist Tong Tian who told Mu Yuda about this. Other than that, how many people in the world knew about this? No, you're not him. Lin Lang Wentian suddenly reacted. He could see that Mu Yuda's situation was different from what was recorded in the ancient books. The person recorded in the ancient books was known as the Lord of the Four Underworlds. The four underworlds were the East, West, South, and North underworlds. The person recorded in the ancient books was the Lord of the Four Underworlds. He was also known as the Lord of the Underworlds and the Lord of the Underworlds. You're just a remnant of his soul, Lin Lang Wentian shouted. Don't try to fool me. When did I say anything? Mu Yuda was also stunned by her words. Then he pointed at his feet and said, Today, I won't say anything else, but you can't destroy the Jiang family. You! Lin Lang Wentian raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, Who do you think you are? Me, Mu Yuda said in a low voice. An aura erupted from his body. He had reached the level of a demigod. Moreover, Mu Yuda's aura was still rising. It was almost on par with Lin Lang Wentian's strength. Impossible. No one in this world can become a demigod, Lin Lang Wentian exclaimed. Her eyes were filled with shock and surprise. Why is it impossible? You've reached the level of a demigod. Mu Yuda pursed his lips. If it weren't for the lack of time, I would have become a demigod long ago. Chapter 615. No one knew better than Mu Yuda what was inside the cave on the third mountain. He had obtained a great opportunity inside, and his cultivation level had skyrocketed. However, he could not stay in the cave for too long. There were special laws and orders inside. If he stayed there for too long, he would be in big trouble. That was why Mu Yuda had to come out of seclusion. Just as he said, if he was given a little more time to cultivate in the cave for a period of time, he would be able to become a god in the cave. However, Mu Yuda came out of seclusion at the right time. I don't want to talk to you. You can be the boss of the godless continent. I just need to protect Jiang Yueli for Jiang Chun. Mu Yuda said, If you don't agree, you can try. I, Lin Lang Wentian, am a man of my word. Lin Lang Wentian narrowed his eyes, and the killing intent in his eyes surged. If I say the Jiang family will die today, then it must die. What a joke. I dare you to move. Mu Yuda was also furious. I've said so much to you, but you still don't want to leave, right? Fine. Fight. Boom. The next moment, the two of them attacked without saying a word. One of them was like a purple true dragon, flying across the void. When he opened his palm, it was as if the universe was turning upside down. The other person was like a Taodai, swallowing everything around him, with his mouth open. Mu Yuda's Taoist robe fluttered. The light in his mouth shone brightly, and the entire Jiang family was sucked into his mouth. He was worried that the Jiang family would be implicated in the battle. If you die, no one in the Jiang family will be left alive, Lin Lang Wentian roared. The two of them fought from the real world to the void, and then from the void to the ground. With Lin Lang Wentian's cultivation level, he was not weaker than Mu Yuda. If he attacked with his full strength, Mu Yuda would have been defeated. However, Lin Lang Wentian was wary of Mu Yuda. That was because Mu Yuda was too similar to the person recorded in the ancient books. If he was really the person recorded in the ancient books, Lin Lang Wentian would not dare to kill him. Lin Lang Wentian had not used his full strength. He retreated as he fought. The two of them went deep into the ground until they reached an open area. There was a black river there. The river water was calm and had never flowed since ancient times. This river was the so-called Nether River. According to legend, the end of the Nether River was connected to the 9 underworlds, connected to the true Yellow Springs. And inside, the world's #1 mountain was there. If you really are that person, then when you reach the first mountain, there will definitely be changes. Lin Lang Wentian thought as she fought and retreated. The two of them went against the Netherworld River and fought their way up. 3 days later, the two of them arrived at the end of the Nether River. You purposely lured me here, Muyuda whispered. The two of them had been fighting for 3 whole days. How could he not have guessed Lin Lang Wentian's intentions? So what? If you really are the Lord of the Four Abyss, would you dare to enter? Lin Lang Wentian said in a deep voice. If not, then the end of the Nether River will be your burial ground. Muyuda's expression became strange when he heard this. So what if he was the Lord of the Four Underworlds? Currently, his memory was incomplete, and his cultivation was weaker than Lin Lang Wentian's. Even if he was the master of the Four Underworlds, wouldn't it be easy for Lin Lang Wentian to kill him? If that was the case, why did Lin Lang Wentian insist on an answer? Could it be that if Muyuda was the Lord of the Four Underworlds, it had a lot to do with Lin Lang Wentian? Since ancient times, living people have never entered the Four Underworlds. I'm still alive. How can I enter the underworld? Muyuda said angrily. Don't tell me you have a way to enter the underworld. You can enter after I kill you, Lin Lang Wentian said coldly. Wait! Muyuda panicked and hurriedly waved his hand. He was puzzled. Lin Lang Wentian had been giving in to him before. Why was Lin Lang Wentian being serious now? Brother, don't you want to know if I'm the Lord of the Four Underworlds? If you kill me now, who's going to tell you the answer? However, Muyuda didn't know that the so-called First Mountain was actually a small hill at the end of the Nether River. Just like at this moment, the inconspicuous little slope between Lin Lang Wentian and Muyuda was the first mountain that everyone in the world knew. They were already at the first mountain, but Muyuda didn't react at all. Lin Lang Wentian naturally thought that Muyuda wasn't the Lord of the Four Underworlds. Since he wasn't, what was the point of keeping him alive? Just kill him. Boom! Lin Lang Wentian didn't show any mercy at this moment. She pressed her palm down, and the entire void collapsed. Even the water of the Nether River, which hadn't flowed for thousands of years, started flowing slowly under this palm. Muyuda's face was pale. He finally understood how powerful Lin Lang Wentian was. Muyuda would not be able to defend himself against this palm strike. Wait, let me know why I'm going to die. Muyuda panicked and gave up. He looked at Lin Lang Wentian and asked curiously, You really can't destroy the sacred ones with your strength? Why should I destroy them? Lin Lang Wentian chuckled. Her face was full of mockery as she said, I'll leave behind a strong opponent for myself so that I won't be defeated. Only then will the world respect me and know how strong I am. So, you can destroy the sacred ones, but you didn't, Muyuda said in a low voice. You left the sacred ones alive just to show off. But if you destroyed the sacred ones, wouldn't the world know how powerful you are? Lin Lang Wentian chuckled. If the sacred ones were still around, the godless continent would need me. As long as I say the word, who would dare to disobey? If the sacred ones were gone, the godless continent wouldn't need me to protect it. By then, although people would listen to me, it wouldn't be like now, where everyone respects me. You're so selfish, Muyuda said in a low voice. Lin Lang Wentian purposely didn't destroy the sacred ones for the sake of that groundless glory, respect, and respect. If this matter were to spread, it would chill the hearts of many living beings on the godless continent. Now, you know what you need to know. You can die in peace, Lin Lang Wentian said softly. Her palm was already 10 feet above Muyuda's head. If I die, Zhongchen won't let you off, Muyuda roared angrily. He was afraid of death, so his entire body was trembling. He was afraid of death, so he wanted to use Jiang Chen's name to intimidate Lin Lang Wentian. However, how could the current Lin Lang Wentian be afraid of Jiang Chen? I can't accept this. At this moment, Muyuda roared, I haven't gone to the first mountain yet. My physical body is still there. If my physical body and soul were complete, I wouldn't be afraid of you. The moment he finished speaking, the space around him seemed to freeze. Then, a very gentle voice came from the small slope. You're finally here. Chapter 616. His words caused Linlang Wentian's expression to change drastically. He hurriedly stopped and retreated far away. The divine light on his body burned like flames. It looked like he was going to fight with his life on the line. Muyuda was dumbfounded because he saw cracks appearing on the small slope in front of him. A black palm covered in obscure patterns was struggling to dig out from the cracks. Who are you? Muyuda was terrified. Even his voice was trembling. For some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity the moment he saw the palm. However, he also felt an inexplicable sense of fear. In fact, he could even understand the cryptic patterns on the palm with a single glance. Those were the runes of the underworld. It was a kind of brand. In the underworld, such a brand was a supreme honor. You're asking who I am? The unknown living being at the bottom of the small slope seemed to be surprised. After a pause, he said, I am you, and you are me. Then who am I? Muyuda asked. The Lord of the Four Abyss, the King of the Underworld. The living being at the bottom of the small slope suddenly raised his voice, full of arrogance. At this moment, Linlang Wentian turned around and ran without looking back. He knew that he had caused a lot of trouble. Linlang Wentian even regretted it. If he had killed Muyuda directly, he would not have caused such a huge problem. However, he also had other thoughts in his mind. Otherwise, Linlang Wentian would not have gone through so much trouble to lure Muyuda here. You're finally here. I've been waiting for you for countless years. Boom! At this moment, the small slope exploded. A man covered in purple and gold stood there. His arms and palms were black and filled with the brand of the underworld. His appearance was not quite the same as Muyuda's. However, upon closer inspection, it was clearly the older Muyuda. I am the Lord of the Four Abyss, Muyuda said softly as images flashed past his eyes. The memories of his previous life were completely awakened the moment he saw this living being. He saw his past and knew why his physical body was here. At this moment, Muyuda's expression changed drastically. He stared at the living being and said, You shouldn't have come into being, but you're here. The living being said softly, Since you're here, you must want me to come into being. No, I was the one who sealed you back then. You devil fetus. Muyuda roared with a ferocious expression. Go back. However, the creature chuckled softly. He pointed at Muyud and said, Do you still have the strength to seal me now? At this point, the living being laughed wildly. There was arrogance in his laughter, but there was also a trace of sadness. Perhaps no one would have thought that it was Muyuda who had sealed his own body. Instead of being the lord of the underworld, why did you have to go to the mortal realm? Look at how miserable you are now. The creature sighed. Why is it like this? Could it be that the creatures of the underworld are really so dark and filthy? You've killed too many people, Muyud said grimly. However, Muyuda fell silent the moment he finished speaking. This creature was the body that Muyuda had shed in his previous life. He had placed all the stains on this fleshly body. After that, Muyuda reincarnated and became what he was today. However, at the end of the day, Muyuda was the one who had caused all the bloodshed in the past. Both of them knew that Muyud was only deceiving himself when he sealed his body. You and I both know what happened, the creature said softly. The creature said softly, I've shouldered all the infamy and sins for you, but in the end, you've sealed me away. Are you worthy of me? Muyuda was speechless. He could not refute the creature's words. After regaining his memories, Muyuda realized how ruthless he had been back then. In fact, Muyuda had contributed to the chaos in the most chaotic eras in the world. I didn't want to continue, so I sealed you. I've repented, Muyuda said. Why can you repent, but I can't? The creature's eyes narrowed. Don't leave me behind. Take me with you. Why wouldn't I agree to it? Moreover, I'm your body. I'll do whatever you want. When have I ever disobeyed you? What do you take me for? The words made Muyuda's thoughts more and more complicated. He did not dare to look into the creature's eyes. He felt ashamed and guilty. You're a soul, and I'm a body. We should be together, the creature said. After the fusion, you'll still be you. This body will still be under your control, and I'll still be the lord of the four abysses in the eyes of the world. As for what you'll do in the future, I have no right to interfere. Just like I said, I'm just your body. All the actions of this body will be controlled by you, the soul. From now on, whether it's good or bad, whether it's evil or good, it'll still be up to you. Buzz! Just as he finished speaking, the living being suddenly exploded into a rain of light that filled the sky and rained down on Muyuda's body. This was the ritual of fusion. It could not be reversed. After all, the two of them were originally one. Muyuda stood where he was. He did not resist. He knew that resistance was useless. However, he sighed inwardly. How did things come to this? If your heart is good, darkness can also be light. All of a sudden, Taoist Heavenspan appeared. He looked at Muyuda and said, "Can you tell the difference between good and evil?" Muyuda opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Could one really tell the difference between good and evil? What was good? What was evil? There was no right or wrong in this world. It seems you haven't thought things through, Taoist Heavenspan said softly. Then, he performed a hand seal and branded a seal on Muyuda's soul. When you've thought things through, the seal will be undone, Taoist Heavenspan said. With that, he turned to leave. At this moment, Muyud hurriedly stopped Taoist Heavenspan and asked, "What about you? You're the lord of a realm. Have you ever thought things through?" "Me? What else can I think about? I don't even have a home anymore. I'm just an old man who's been stranded outside." Taoist Heavenspan laughed. However, this smile was filled with sorrow and a wisp of indescribable anger. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the 6 worlds, and now, Muyuda sighed and did not finish a sentence. He had regained his memories and knew what had happened. It was a tragedy for the entire world. Let's wait for him to come back. If he does, we might be able to take everything back. Taoist Heavenspan said, "I'll take back my underworld sooner or later," Muyuda said in a low voice. Chapter 6:17. Very few people knew what had happened back then. There were only a few records in the ancient books. One of them was about the 6 Tao and the 6 realms. Taoist Heavenspan did not say anything else. He stepped into the void and left the place. Half a day later, Muyuda merged with his body. His cultivation had reached the level of a demigod and below a true god. "Old man, you're still so careful. You sealed so much of my cultivation." Muyuda smiled bitterly. However, although Muyuda was smiling, he gave off a very sinister feeling. Muyuda had fused with his physical body, and his soul had become one with his body. Logically speaking, he should have recovered to his peak state. However, Taoist Heavenspan was afraid of Muyuda, because Muyuda was one of the instigators of the Dark Rebellion. Taoist Heavenspan was worried that Muyuda would start another Dark Rebellion, so he sealed most of his cultivation. However, both of them knew that the seal was nothing more than a decoration to Muyuda after he returned. As long as Muyuda wanted to, he could break the seal at any time. "Yeah, I still can't tell the difference between good and evil." Muyuda let out a long sigh. He patted his chest and said, "Old friend, I won't abandon you in this life. Even if it's good, I'll respect it with you. Even if it's evil, I'll bear it with you," Muyuda said. With that, Muyuda formed a seal with his hands, and many seals fell on his body. He was worried that he would not be able to break Taoist Heavenspan's seal, so he added a few more seals on himself. Moreover, they were inner demon seals. "If I can't tell the difference between good and evil, this seal will stay with me for the rest of my life. Even if I die, I won't be able to break it," Muyuda said. With that, Muyuda stood up and looked at the door at the end of the underworld river. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. That used to be his home. It used to be a world. It used to be the most important place on the reincarnation road. But now, it no longer belonged to him. During the earliest chaos, the underworld was conquered. In order to prevent the living beings in the underworld from coming out, the paragons worked together to seal the underworld. Right now, Muyuda was standing at the entrance of his hometown, but he didn't dare to enter. He couldn't enter. One day, the 6 paths will return, and the 6 realms will appear together. The world will become even more beautiful. Muyuda said. In the end, Muyud left and stepped into the void, arriving at the barren state. He spat out the Jiang family's mountain gate in his body, landing on the mountain gate that used to belong to the Chuanzuan sect. At the same time, he spread his divine sense across the land and found the people of the Chuanzuan sect in a small world. He brought the Quanzun sect back and settled them in the center of the barren state with the Jiang family. On this day, a powerhouse from the saint race arrived, but after looking from afar, he hurriedly fled. Oh no! Another demigod monster has appeared. What? What kind of world is this? How could there be such a creature? The entire saint race was shaken. There were even people who sighed in grief. He originally thought that the sacred race would be able to unify the godless continent, but who would have thought that Linlang Wentian would appear first? And now Mu Yud. 2 demigod existences were enough to exterminate the saints. No, we have to make a choice. Sacrifice. Our saint race has done so much. We cannot fail at the final moment. Sacrifice. Begin the sacrifice. For darkness and dawn. On this day, all 18 saint race families were summoned back. Among them were those who had defected to the saint race. It was also on this day that the entire underworld state was filled with blood-curdling screams. The smell of blood howled like a gale. The entire sky above the underworld state was shrouded in a layer of blood mist. Blood sacrifice. The saint race is really sparing no expense. Linlang Wentian stood at the former location of the martial pavilion and looked up at the underworld state. A solemn look flashed across her eyes. Blood sacrifice, as its name implied, was a blood sacrifice to the great Tao. Perhaps it was a terrifying power. Now looking at the sky of the underworld state, Linlang Wentian knew that there were probably not many living beings left in the underworld state. 80 to 90% of the creatures have been killed, used as a blood sacrifice. Linlang Wentian, today is the final battle. All of you must die. No one can stop our saint race. 3 days later, the sky of the underworld state was clear again. However, there were 3 people standing there, challenging Linlang Wentian from tens of thousands of miles away. 3 demigods? Linlang Wentian muttered softly, but the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said mockingly, "So what if you became a demigod through blood sacrifice? It's not your own power, so it's inherently flawed. No matter how many of you have, I, Linlang Wentian, am still not afraid. Old man, do you think I should make a move?" At this moment, Muyid stared at the underworld state and said softly. He knew that Taoist Heavenspan was watching him at all times. Taoist Heavenspan could hear his whisper. If you want to protect something, then protect it. In terms of good and evil, you don't understand at all in your current situation. Taoist Heavenspan's voice rang in Mu Yud's ears. I'll help protect that person's foundation. I'll take it as I owe him, Mu Yud said softly. With that, Mu Yud soared into the sky and stood at the top of the barren state. He stared at the 3 demigods of the saint race and said, I'll fight this battle. Attack together. We're all above demigods. How can we lose to you when it's 3 against 2? After today, the godless continent will have a new master. In the next moment, 2 of them charged at Linlang Wentian, while the other charged at Mu Yud. Mu Yud was stunned for a moment. He muttered, how much are they looking down on me? 2 against Linlang Wentian, but only 1 against me? Boom! Boom! On this day, the battle between the 5 demigods began. No one could see the situation clearly. They had all entered the void and were fighting fiercely at the edge of the chaos. The fluctuations of the battle were like thunder, reverberating throughout the entire godless continent. Everyone's hearts were in their throats because this battle concerned the life and death of the godless continent. We've lost. Yeah, we've lost. 10 days later, Taoist Heavenspan and the beings of the 3rd mountain spoke at almost the same time. They could see the situation of the battle and also saw that Lin Lang Wentian and Mu Yud were being suppressed. Fortunately, the three demigods of the saint race were also severely injured. However, what surprised everyone was that at the last moment, two of the three demigods actually self-destructed. They poured their cultivation, essence, spirit, and even soul energy into the other person's body. A god of the land. After so many years, a god of the land has appeared again. Taoist heaven span and the beings of the third mountainside. In front of a god of the land, demigods were nothing. At this moment, Lin Lang Wentian was the first to retreat. He charged directly into the chaos, knowing that only in the chaos would he have a chance of survival. Chapter 6:18. Even a deity would not dare to enter the boundless chaos. Now, Lin Lang Wentian could only hide in it to save his life. At this moment, he was filled with regret. If he had destroyed the divine tribe and foregone the so-called glory, he would not have to face such trouble now. Although I have not recovered to my peak, I am invincible in the godless continent. At this moment, the deity of the divine tribe laughed wildly. He stared at Mu Yud, who had not left, and said mockingly, "What? You still want to stop me?" "I can't." Mu Yud shook his head helplessly. There was a seal in his body. If the seal could be broken, a mere deity of the land would be nothing. But now, Mu Yud could not break the seal at all. The godless continent is going to be destroyed in the end, the deity said softly. He slowly reached out his hand and pressed down on Mu Yud. If the godless continent is destroyed, so be it. It is just a springboard, Mu Yud said softly. Right now, I only want to protect some things. After saying that, Mu Yud looked at the deity mockingly and asked, "Do you really think you can kill me?" "Humph, you are already a dead man." The deity sneered. In his eyes, even if Mu Yud's cultivation was above the demigod level, he could not compete with him. "I can't compete with you, but if I want to leave, you can't stop me," Mu Yud said softly. Buzz! As soon as he finished speaking, light danced around Mu Yud, and a space-time passage seemed to appear. He stepped into it and used a great technique to take away the Jiang family and the Chuanzun sect. So be it. The deity did not care. In his eyes, he was invincible. Now it was time to do the most important thing. The door of darkness. It will be open today. The deity shouted with a smile and excitement on his face. He returned to the nether continent and arrived in front of an abyss. This abyss was very famous in the nether continent. It was called Heaven's Abyss, and it was said to be connected to the heavens. However, no one knew that this so-called Heaven's Abyss was actually a sealed place. At the bottom of the abyss, there was a door. That door was the door of darkness. The gate of darkness was connected to another world, precisely the other side. At this moment, this deity was standing in front of Heaven Abyss. He frowned and said softly, "This seal is a bit tricky. It will take some time." After saying that, he began to form hand seals with both hands and began to break the seal. As long as the seal was broken, he would be able to smoothly enter Heaven Abyss and open the door of darkness. At that time, the world would usher in the darkest era. "Old thing, are you really not going to make a move?" At this moment, Mu Yudo was standing at the peak of a small world. "How do I do it?" Taoist Heavenspan said helplessly. "It's not like you don't know the situation I'm in. If I attack, everything will be gone." AI. Mu Yud let out a long sigh. He knew exactly how strong Taoist Heavenspan was, and also knew that there was nothing he could do about it. If Taoist Heavenspan could attack, he would have done so long ago. Is there no hope for this world? Mu Yud asked. He thought of the underworld. Back then, the underworld had been conquered in the same way. However, compared to the godless continent, the underworld was bigger and had a higher level. It was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the 9 firmaments. Perhaps there's still hope. Taoist Heavenspan's voice was strange as he looked at the third mountain. At the same time, the living being on the third mountain was staring at Jiang Chun, his eyes filled with shock. That was because Jiang Qin's body was rippling. That was a sign that he was about to awaken. Furthermore, Jiang Qin's aura was rising, and mysterious runes were flashing around him. There was also the image of a halberd floating above Jiang Qin's head. That was Jiang Qin's weapon when he was Celestial King Tian Yuan. "The weapon spirit has returned," the living being on the third mountain exclaimed. The weapon spirit was the soul of a weapon. For example, a sword had a sword spirit, and a saber had a saber spirit. Previously, Jiang Qin had obtained the weapon he used when he was Celestial King Tian Yuan, the halberd. But at that time, the weapon spirit had long since disappeared. But now, with Jiang Qin's Great Dream 3000, the weapon spirit had returned. This was the weapon Jiang Qin used when he was Celestial King Tian Yuan, and it contained a trace of the power of the Tao. What kind of dream did this kid have? What did he experience in his dream? The living being on the third mountain exclaimed. He suspected that Jiang Qin might have returned to the past and dreamed of being Celestial King Tian Yuan. To find the past in a dream was something that had never happened before. Could something have happened? The living being on the third mountain frowned. Something like this had never happened before. Even he did not know if Jiang Qin would still be the same person after waking up. Great Dream 3000. What did you dream of? The living being sighed, unsure of what to do. Wong. At that moment, a vibration came from Jiang Qin's body. Then, the weapon spirit solidified, and the halberd appeared automatically from Jiang Qin's body. Then, the weapon spirit merged with the halberd, and a trace of the power of the Tao entered Jiang Qin's body. At the same time, ancient scriptures appeared. Upon closer inspection, it looked more like a Tao skill. 6 calamities. The creature cried out in surprise. He recognized these scriptures, and with a single glance, he could tell what was recorded in these scriptures. This was a Tao skill. This was the famous Tao skill Jiang Qin used when he was Celestial King Tian Yuan, the 6 calamities. The 6 calamities and heavenly calamities were very famous even when Jiang Qin was Divine King Tian Yuan. However, in this world, only Jiang Qin could use it. That was because this Tao skill could only be used with the heavenly halberd. In the past, during the final battle, Jiang Qin used the 6 calamities to delay until the end, waiting for the gods to descend. This living being had seen Jiang Qin use the 6 calamities before. Its power was just like the name of the Tao skill. 6 calamities appeared together, enough to destroy the heavens. I didn't expect that I would be so strong in that life. Suddenly, Jiang Qin whispered. His eyes slowly opened, but his brows were slightly furrowed. That was because in his dream, he dreamed of his experience as Celestial King Tian Yuan. However, he couldn't remember who he was, especially because he couldn't remember who he was in his first life. More importantly, he didn't know why he had to reincarnate. He only found the Tao skill and weapon spirit of Celestial King Tian Yuan in his dream. Of course, in that dream, Jiang Qin was also cultivating. Now that he had awakened, the cultivation he cultivated in the dream merged with his body, causing his cultivation to skyrocket. At this moment, he had reached the Celestial Decay, Stage 5. Only the Celestial Decay, Stage 5? Although it's much higher than I expected, it's still powerless to change anything. The living being sighed. The Celestial Decay Stage 5 was usually the strongest existence on the godless continent. But now, a land god had appeared among the sacred clan. Chapter 619. Even a demigod was no match for a land god. Jiang Qin, a mere Heaven's Decay Stage 5, was nothing to him. He probably wouldn't even be able to withstand a single finger from the sacred clan's god. By the way, how do you feel now? The creature asked. He was very curious as to why the Great Dream of 3000 would dream of his past life. Logically speaking, the Great Dream of 3000 was a secret technique that would only allow one to dream of a non-existent life. One would cultivate in that new life until they woke up and merged with their own cultivation. Since ancient times, There had been people who had used and tried the great dream of 3,000, but no one had ever dreamed of their past life. I don't know, Jiang Chen said straightforwardly. After I entered, I dreamt of heaven origin divine king's life. As Jiang Chen spoke, he frowned slightly and asked, "Is there any problem with my soul?" "Oh, where did that come from?" The creature seemed surprised, as if he didn't understand what Jiang Chen meant. "Don't pretend. With your status, how can you not know about me?" Jiang Chen smiled bitterly. "In this world, I'm probably the one who is kept in the dark the most. Clearly, all the karma came from me. But now, the one who doesn't know the truth is me." Jiang Chen said softly, "I have a feeling that there's something wrong with my soul. It's like some kind of seal has been added to it. Some kind of memory seal." "Nonsense," the creature said. "There's no such Tao technique in this world. No such restriction, and no such seal." "Then what if there is?" Jiang Chen asked. "What happened in the past? Why did I dream of heaven origin divine king's life, but not the most important part?" "How would I know?" the creature said snappily. "That's your own business. What does it have to do with me?" "It really has nothing to do with me? You really don't know?" Jiang Chen asked. "Even if I know, it has nothing to do with you." The creature's voice suddenly became cold. "Since you've woken up, you can leave now. The third mountain does not welcome outsiders. Wait a little longer. Let me rest here for a few days," Jiang Chen said. The creature didn't say much. It even told Jiang Chen about the current situation of the godless continent. When Jiang Chen learned that the saints had carried out a blood sacrifice to become a god of the land, a faint smile appeared on his face. "A land god? Heh, interesting," Jiang Chen whispered. Then he closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, the halberd beside him entered his body. At the same time, the scripture rushed into his mind. He was revisiting the Tao techniques that he had once mastered. 6 calamities? I really don't know if it's a good or bad thing for such a brutal and disastrous Tao skill to appear again. The living being sighed. However, for this creature, it didn't matter whether Jiang Chen was dead or alive, or whether he had become the strongest man in the world. It didn't matter to him at all. He had been cultivating in the third mountain all this time, cultivating a certain cultivation technique. Once this cultivation technique was completed and he was born, the world would be at peace. The source of all the chaos and chaos in the past would be reduced to ashes. A prosperous era turned into a chaotic era because of the saints. The older generation either doesn't dare to fight, defected, or died. It's time for us, the younger generation, to take control of this golden age. Haha, to die? That's fine too. A person should do something in life. Even if the world calls them demons, I'll accept it. On this day, in a corner of the godless continent, 3 youths stood up. They had just finished their heavenly tribulations, and their cultivation had reached the 5th decay of the heavens. The 3 of them looked young, but each of them exuded a monstrous demonic aura. Ghostly shadows floated around them. Beneath their feet, hundreds of ghosts howled. Above their heads, several black lotuses swayed. It was like the most demonic light in the darkest time and space. It was so dark that it made people tremble, but it was also dark and dazzling. On this day, the 3 of them tore through the void and walked around the godless continent. The demonic aura on their bodies shocked all living beings. These 3 are so young. Which sect are they from? Are they demons? I know them. They are 3 demons who have fallen into the demonic path. Many people cried out in surprise as they raised their heads to look at the 3 figures. Their eyes flickered with shock. Half a day later, the 3 of them arrived near the Nether State's heavenly abyss. Jiang Haoran, Chen Daoming, Lu Songyang. At this moment, the 3 of them landed here. The demonic aura on their bodies surged as they stared at the god who was breaking the seal of heavenly abyss. "You 3 brats, what are you doing here? Do you want to die?" The god raised his eyebrows and scolded angrily. "Get lost. I don't want to fight now." "You don't want to fight? Or you can't fight?" Lu Songyang said mockingly. "You used all your cultivation to break the seal. Now, you can only fight with 20% or 30% of your strength. If the three of us join forces, we can fight with you. Ha ha ha, you're just a traitor. That's much worse than us demons, Chun Daoming said with a smile. He looked at Jiang Haoran and asked, "What do you mean? The righteous Jiang Haoran?" "Just kill them," Jiang Haoran said softly. He used to be righteous, but now he was demonic. "Guys, our boss is no longer here. You don't have the right to interfere in this world, right? Do you want to steal our boss's limelight or our limelight?" Suddenly, a few figures flew over from afar. Taking a closer look, the person in the lead was a little fatty. He looked very honest, but his cultivation had reached the peak of celestial decay 5. On both sides of him, there was an elegant young master with a long whistle in his hand. However, there were corpses and bones under his feet. On the other side, there was a young man with purple light all over his body. He was domineering, and when he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be purple stars floating in his eyes. These three people were Jiang Lu, Xiao Qingyi, and Wakako. "Oh, you're all here? I'm lucky to have made it in time." In the north, a woman's tone was slightly arrogant. Behind her, a door floated up and down as if a creature was about to walk out. This person was Hua Liani. Immediately after, many people came from all directions. Most of them were a group of young men led by Jiang Chun. Even Hua Liani and Bai Fengyu came. In the end, there were more than a dozen young men and women at Heavenly Decay Stage 5. They were more or less related to Jiang Chun. The era of the older generation is over. In this era, if we don't die, it'll be our world. Young and impetuous? No, this was the situation forcing them. Was the situation forcing them? No, this was for righteousness. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.